Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to ANON Summit 2020. Live from Gostahalle in Vienna, I am talking to you. My name is Shiva Rahramani. I'm the moderator of ANON Summit, and I'm going to be your guide through the day. I hope you did enjoy yesterday as much as I did. I promise you today is going to be just another fantastic day with so much to look forward to. We have a great expo area, networking session, and not to forget, great panel talks and speeches from our speakers. I have Daniel with me today. Daniel, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Shiva. I'm doing great, and you?
Very good. So we had a quite busy day yesterday. You know, the chat area was very busy. We had great talks. So what were your highlights of yesterday, the first day?
My highlight definitely was the chat, as you said, because there were so many people chatting and talking throughout the whole day. We are actually able to, export the whole chat, and we will look into it and, maybe also release some quotes on Twitter because we had some really nice questions to the speakers as well, and it was just a really nice interaction to see everybody talking. There was actually no trouble at all. We had no spamming, no promotion, nothing. Maybe a little bit in the first hours, but they quickly realized that it's completely at the wrong place because almost everybody is like behaving. It's not the right word, but you know what I mean. And I really enjoyed the chat. And of course, all the speeches and panels were amazing as well. But for me, I was a little bit scared, to be honest, when we had 8,000 attendees registered. What will be going on in the chat? Will it be total chaos? So that was let's say, one of our biggest fears in advance. But it turned out great, and so that made me very happy. And it was my personal highlight.
Cool. And what about today? What are you looking forward the most during this day of the event?
So since I'm let's say, old gamer, I'm really looking forward to the NFT part of today, since we have a very nice keynote, followed by an even better panel, and it all gets rounded up by a huge announcement by the Austrian Post Office about the Cryptostamp 2.0. So this is definitely my highlight of the day, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I've also seen some people in the chat feeling the same way because they were it already started a discussion today about what are you guys looking forward the most, and almost everybody wrote NFT. So I'm excited that almost all attendees share the same passion as I do. So yeah, it gives me a good feeling that we made the right decision to give NFTs such a big stage here at ANON this year, and it seems like this was the right decision after all.
Cool. I believe the chat area is already busy, right? People already started talking and asking questions, right?
Yeah, sure. The chat is active. Also, the networking part is active. Someone even asked me to open up a session again, so there was a session going live in the morning as well. We actually had 2 sessions open for the whole night, since it's day for Americans, for example. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to check how the session worked since I was sleeping during the time, but we will be able to evaluate it after today. And yeah, it's really like that's one major part why we choose Hopin as the platform, because it offers so much interactive parts and interactive features like the networking, like the sessions, and that we always have the chat going. So it seems like people really appreciate it, because compared to a classic YouTube stream, that gets boring. I mean, like, what is the difference between watching a live stream on YouTube or a pre-recorded video on YouTube? The conference experience needs the interactive part, and that is what Hopin does really good, and that's why we chose it.
Thank you, Daniel. So guys, we are going to start our first track of the second day just in a few seconds. On the one hand, we have a topic which is falling short of its expectations. On the other hand, we have something which is currently on everybody's lips. It's going to be the next hot trend in blockchain. But both of them have something in common. Almost unlimited use cases. From real estate to gaming, tokenization can be used in everything and for everything. The next 3 hours will be all about tokenization and NFTs, and for that I would like to welcome Eric Demuth, who is the CEO and co-founder of Bitpanda, together with Jessica Walker, who is the head of media production at Sigma Group, for a hot fireside chat. Eric and Jessica, hello, and the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Eric, it's great to be introduced to you. Thank you so much for the time today. Great to open the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having us.
You're very welcome. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction as well before we jump straight in, because it sounds like it's been a very busy year for Bitpanda. So you yourself, Eric, you're an entrepreneur, co-founder and CEO of Bitpanda. Bitpanda was founded in 2014 and it already has 1.2 million users and growing, with 24/7 access to digital and tokenized assets. So it sounds like the sky's the limit with Bitpanda. So I just want to jump straight in and just ask you, first of all, for those who haven't heard of Bitpanda yet, can you give us a little bit of an introduction just to what you do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we started very, very easily. We started with a service that made it very, very easy to access cryptocurrencies. I mean, that was nearly 6 years ago. And now, over the time, we developed the whole platform to, let's say, more digital asset investment platform, because we feel like it is very, very hard to get your money into proper investments without a lot of middlemen, and transparency, easiness, use case. And I think this was the recipe for success, I would say.
Amazing. And the vision for the company then, because there must have been a need for what you've filled a hole in the market, and there was a niche that you've managed to cater to. So what was your vision for the company?
Yeah, the vision was, you don't start something and then you say, okay, this will be the next Amazon or whatever. This is bullshit. You start very, very lean. You start with a purpose, and from there you see where it's going, because nobody at this time could predict where the whole industry goes. Nobody from us can predict where the industry is going in the next 3 years. So you have some ideas, and while doing this and getting a lot of feedback and responses, you form it. Everything is changing constantly. So we knew from the beginning we want to do something that makes investing easy. That it got so big so fast, we didn't expect that, but that's a good sign that we're on the right track here.
It does sound like you are on the right track and things are moving forward, because you've gone from kind of being just as a crypto player, and now it's a leading investment platform. So what kind of goals do you have then moving forward into the future?
So we saw the success with crypto. So it has to be, everything nowadays have to be one click away. I always refer to when you buy an iPhone, then you don't get a manual. It's completely intuitive. And that's the role model. That's how it should look like. And we feel like something that seems to be very, very complicated and overwhelming, where people are still need their middleman at the bank, which is completely unnecessary in my opinion. You can make it very, very simple and easy, and take away all this fear, and bring transparency in and cut cost. And this is actually working out. And this is why we last year introduced the same system we did with cryptocurrency for precious metals, so real physical gold trading. And so all the good learning and all the advantages from crypto, we are now bringing to other asset classes, and that's working very well. And I think this has a huge potential for pretty much everyone who, I mean, another topic in Austria, for example, in general, in Europe, only 7% of the people own stocks, for example. Compared to the US, this is nothing. But this also means, because there are no tools. If crypto would still look like 6 years ago, where you had to send money to an exchange abroad, then it got converted into US dollar, then you had to wait, and then you had to set limit order, stop loss order. Most people don't even know what this means. Yeah. So, and I think without tools like we build it, so a few clicks away, everything is instant. You use your Amazon card, so it's like a web shop. You open the gates to a lot more people around the world.
And this is something that really resonates with me, because I used to work for a Forex black button trading platform, also touching on commodities and stocks. But I didn't actually, the first thing I bought was crypto. So I think I'm one of your target demographics that started in crypto and only then expanded out. So why did you decide to move out of the crypto niche? Was it just for this reason?
No, but let's go one step back. You said, okay, you started there with crypto. And then commodity trading and so on. But if you look into commodity trading or trading in general, then you have still the problem. Ask your friends, ask your family, tell me what a spread is, what is a bid ask, why? And then they log into a platform. There are several markets on there. It's overwhelming. If I had no idea how this works, and this is very complicated, then with all the terminologies, then I said, okay, there's a lot of money involved, so I won't do it in the first place. But back to your question, what was the initial question?
So what was your decision behind starting into crypto and then just moving solely out of this crypto niche, also into, you mentioned precious metals as well, so there was the expansion out?
I mean, there are several reasons. If you go back, and then there is a story when I was, I think I was 17, and I was already starting to interest for financial stuff, for the financial market. It got my attention. And I remember one day I was with my parents and their bank advisors, and their bank advisor just said, okay, I have this and this here, put this money in this fund and so on, and we'll be fine. And then at this time I looked at this, and this was really garbage. That was absolute garbage. And there I realized very early, these guys are not their advisors, they are the salesmen. And then I said, okay, you can't just have their life savings or their savings invested because of recommendation of someone who is just selling them some products. And that in mind was always, okay, you have to simplify it, you have to make it accessible, you have to make it easy to understand, leave away all these complicated stuff. In general, if you do not understand it completely, don't do it. And I think this was always the motivation. And then moving from something where we have been in quite early, from crypto, and then seeing, okay, this works everywhere. This works in all asset classes, and we can target a lot more people. And this is also, I think, what fintechs are doing, and especially what we're doing as NeoBroker. Like this, we can close the wealth gap as well, if you see it on a much broader picture. Because let's talk about stocks again. If you are, let's say you have 1,000 euro savings to put into the stock market, you can't build a stocks portfolio. It's impossible. Let's say even one Amazon stock costs 2,000 euro. So this is why we say all the learnings we have from crypto, we are now bringing to new asset classes, and I think that will open up to a wider audience, and that can also close the wealth gap, because currently all the stock market stuff is and maybe also in the future tokenized real estate. This is only currently available for the riches only.
And you said the phrase neo-broker there, and neo-brokers being kind of the future movement. Some people might not necessarily even have heard the term before. So maybe we can start just with a little bit of an introduction. How would you explain what a neo-broker is?
I think the easiest way is to just make a comparison. A few years ago, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, for example, what is a neobank or a challenger bank, I couldn't have told you. But I think this term from several journalists are used now to describe what we have seen with these neobanks before. So these Revolut, the N26, and so on around the world, new bank. And what they are doing is they let's say do the They focus on the user experience, make it very, very easy, and bring banking and payments into the really digital age in an app that is, let's say, in the format of the year 2020. They cut away all this stuff that is not necessary, simplify it, make it easy to understand, make it accessible, and also cool again. And of course, with the broker stuff, it's a bit more complicated, but that is the real challenge here. And I think we're doing quite well because we have the experience from a very complicated topic with crypto and blockchain. And now to make investment, the financial market accessible, simple, and cool for the whole new digital generation.
And accessible just seems like a complete word that for me summarizes this neo movement, because neobanks as well, the modern way of banking is people travel all the time. And
yeah.
I think we all remember, 15 years ago, you had to tell your bank if you were going on a holiday. And now with apps like Revolut and fintech movements, it does seem to be more accessible for sure. So neo brokers, would you say they are this movement which is really going to close this wealth gap and kind of level the playing field?
I mean, you have to close the wealth gap yourself pretty much. We can just build the tools to make it easy and simple so that the onboarding is, okay, I download the app, I have my passport, and then 3 minutes later it's done. This is how it has to be in 2020. And when you go right now to more traditional brokers, then that takes days. You probably still, for some, you still have to fill out a real paper, send it back. And then you have an interface that is just overwhelming if you are not an expert when it comes to financial markets. And this is something people just stay away from. Because if I have the feeling I can do something wrong and it's not intuitive, then I don't do it. Plus, also it has to be, or how do you say that, divisible. So it doesn't matter where you're coming from, and it really doesn't matter how much money you have. You should have access to all the same thing. Everybody should have access to the same things. Maybe you just buy less, but you still get the same deal. For example, what we did with gold. You can buy real physical gold now on our platform, and it doesn't matter if you put in €3 and you still get the real physical gold, it's yours, or 300,000 euro, you get the same deal. And that is the cheapest one in Europe for 0.5%. This is, but you use, this is what I said, I feel like I'm repeating myself constantly. You use all the learnings and all the good stuff we have from the blockchain and from crypto, and then transfer just to other asset classes. It's actually very simple.
It is, and I think it's simple from the fact that there's an easy onboarding process as well, because this is really important. And I think as humans now, we are getting a little bit, lazier. We like things to be done faster as well. So an onboarding process that takes a long time is something which is off-putting for clients as well. Was that something that was quite a struggle for you to implement, or it was a really important element?
Yeah, this was, when we started these, let's say, electronic video, photo onboarding, they weren't very popular, or they were just starting themselves. So at the beginning, you had to improvise. At the beginning, like 6 years ago, you had to send, you had to make pictures yourself and do a selfie, So we were quite lucky that that front cameras already existed at this time. But you had to improvise a lot, and now there are much more professional solutions and partners we can work together with. And luckily, we are already in a time where the regulator and also the lawmakers say, okay, this is currently state of the art. We have to build laws for this, so it's actually implementable. And the whole industry, as you know, as we all know, in the crypto industry, what happened in the last 5 years, it got from the, let's say, young teenage times, let's say, when we really grew up, the whole industry grew up and got professionalized. So that's very nice to see.
That's so true. And it's so funny you said that, because I think every single person that was in the space in the year 2015 or 2016 will have a photo on their laptop of them holding a piece of paper with their name and their wallet number to try and verify. That's how it was. So you mentioned regulation there. And I kind of want to ask you, when it comes to this big decision that you have to take to avoid or embrace cryptocurrency regulation, what is your stance?
I mean, we were big fans of regulation in the first place. The only challenge with regulation, when you had none before, to getting some kind of regulation is it has to make sense. But this is why you need to be open, approachable for the regulator, for the lawmaker, and then also form it together so that you don't kill an industry. That can happen quite fast, but have laws that really make sense. And that was really the challenge here. But if you have regulation, then you get boosted into a new dimension, because, for example, our task was from the beginning to be the bridge between the old financial system with banks, payment providers, and whatsoever, and then with people say like, okay, I want it easy, I want it now, cut away all the hurdles and so on. And then but there are two different actors in there, and you both have to satisfy them. When you have a guideline, when you have a regulation, like you have to do it like this, you can move freely in that space. Then it's much easier to find partners. The whole banking industry opened up and started to work with us. And let's say 5 years ago, that was, we all know the stories where crypto companies had a lot of problems to finding banking partners. And that's not the case. At least for us, it's not the case. I think we are treated like a big fintech in Europe, and not like a crypto company that is, putting into a different bracket, let's say it like this. So regulation helps a lot to grow your business.
Mm-hmm. And were there times that actually, because being in the space of 5 years, it must have felt like there were sometimes 2 steps forward and 1 step back. What were some of the biggest challenges when it came to working with regulators and trying to move forward and make that position as a fintech company?
Speed. It's always speed, because if you're a fintech, then speed is your biggest asset and also your biggest pain point, or your biggest bottleneck. Mostly not because you are not capable to have proper speed, but mostly, or let's say very often, you are dependent on third parties. And when you have to wait for, let's say, something more administrative, so from the state or the compliance from banks, they don't have the same time pressure. They don't have the same speed as you are used to have. So it can easily happen that you're doing very well and you fall ahead, but then in the end, you have to wait twice as long as you expected because of the dependency. So I would say the biggest challenge is always, for every fintech, flexibility and speed.
Mm-hmm. And you're based in Austria as well. So you also have Bitpanda Go. Is that something that you have it for more experienced traders and institutional investors? Is that something that you've introduced quite recently? Was that something you launched this year?
You said Pro, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, we built it last summer. No, we didn't build it last summer. We built it 2.5 years ago. We started over 2.5 years ago to build everything in-house, but we launched it last summer. And yeah, so 2 different groups we see this industry has. One is the broad audience. So from these 1.2 million users, 99% are retail customers that use the broker. This is what I explained at the beginning. 2 clicks, done. Yeah, everything is there in an app. But then there are some more professional traders that can be, let's say, semi-professional individuals, but mostly smaller funds, people, algo traders that really are into the trading part, the day trading part, doing many trades at once. They have a different profile. They need to have their stop loss orders. They need to have their analysis. They need to have the charting software. They need to have several exchanges to do arbitrage. And then we say, okay, there are two groups, and we want to fulfill both of them, especially as we see the whole industry, the whole asset class, because we think that crypto in general is an asset class that will never go away anymore. And we see that more professional institutional money is coming in, and they need those tools. And as we were one of the first in Europe that got regulated and got licenses, that also helps a lot. And combined with a proper tech stack, this is always, I think, a good standpoint.
A winning combination. What more do you need? So when we look ahead now, what kind of things can we expect when it comes to partnerships and developments moving forward? Have you got any 2020 milestones that you can announce to us?
Yeah, the problem is, and you know yourself when you're in the crypto industry and you announce things when they are not 100% done yet, the 5 minutes after you said it, they are already asking you, everyone's asking you, okay, when is it coming? When is it coming? Constantly. And so we said, okay, we only announce things when they are ready. There will be several product announcements this year. So we did an exception because we said, because it is a longer transformation where we say, okay, we will offer stocks. We will offer a completely new experience when it comes to trading of traditional assets like stocks and ETF. So becoming the proper neo broker I was talking, because this is not a one-time event. But even this summer, we're gonna announce quite soon a great new crypto product. So we were working on for over a year. That is unleaked. So nobody knows about this yet. That will be fun. So there will be several things, but I can't really tell you, except for the stocks part, what it will be.
We'll have to wait and see. So if we look at the next, we'll watch the space. It'll be fine. We'll be patient. Yeah. And I want to ask you about the past few months as well, and just get your opinion on what we've seen, because I think something that I've noticed is we've definitely seen in the crypto space people spending a little bit more time just to educate themselves on the industry if they weren't necessarily familiar with it before. Part of that was due to the Bitcoin halving, just kind of driving up some traditional media outlets just reporting on the news. And also the fact that we have seen COVID-19 people working from home. So I think these elements together, have you seen that actually more retail investors have kind of been looking into what maybe Bitpanda, but also easier introductions into investments?
Yeah. You saw that the broker, the exchanges in crypto or in the traditional, let's say, stocks world, we didn't suffer at all from COVID-19. Of course, that was quite challenging to put. So because our 200 team members here in our office in Vienna, they all had to move to home office. But it worked exceptionally well. I didn't expect it going that smooth. The productivity level was constantly at the same level. I would have said like in the first week even higher because there were no distractions at all. But no. I mean, we saw that the whole industry actually grew. Luckily, we were even profiting. We were growing. We were growing in this time where most industry can't do it. So it's actually hard. And I'm talking to a lot of founders from other companies. I'm very, very lucky, and we're very blessed that we didn't suffer from this at all. I think we have to be thankful for that. But in the end, it's very easy to explain. if you have volatility in the market, if prices go up, if prices go down, it doesn't really matter. If people have opinion and the market moves, companies like us have a lot more traction, have a lot more volume, trading volume in general. If there are more opinions, more movement of the market, the more trades there are, the more revenue you generate. That's the same with the stock market. That's the same with the crypto market, and yeah. So
all in all, it was kind of an interesting pivot, and I think actually it's made a shift towards technology more. The blockchain industry has thrived from this push digital as well. Are you going to see that actually Bitpanda is going to look to introduce their technology to more traditional banks now moving forward?
Which technology do you mean?
Your technology.
Okay.
Just
yeah. So I mean, this is part of the whole learnings we got from crypto, right? So making all kind of accessible, making all kind of tokens, all kind of asset classes accessible. So all the learnings and all the technology we're using for our exchange for crypto, for Bitcoin, we started to do this, what I was just mentioning, with gold. So it's not a CFD or some predatory financial products or paper gold. It's real physical gold. And we use the economy of scale, we use the bulk, and then we give those prices to the customers. And then in the meantime, of course, but this is the story for the future, we're not there yet. Not even close when it comes to regulation and everything. But what we're building is we have our Pandas project that is doing exceptionally well, where you have this inter-blockchain operability. And that can also, we don't know yet, but that can also have a huge part in the future of tokenizing all kind of assets classes and make them, let's say, transferable and interoperable. Jesus Christ, this is a hard word. To send around and to use them. So this technology, this open source technology, can also have a huge impact there. But this is very far in the future, not because we're not fast enough with the development. Actually, it's faster than we expected, but you have to have so many different stakeholders, regulators, lawmakers on board to have all kind of asset classes tokenized. And I think the next thing will be that real estate tokenization. The only problem what most people don't realize, because everybody's talking, real estate tokenization and you make it accessible. There's one part everybody's missing out. You need to have liquidity for this. So please tell me, how do you get, let's say we take your apartment, Jessica, and you want to tokenize it and sell 10% of this.
Yeah.
How do you do this? Because there's no liquidity. If there's no liquidity, how is the price building? That is a huge problem, because without proper liquidity in the market for a certain asset, you can't really trade it. You can't find a price for this. And this is actually the biggest challenge. The challenge is not to tokenize an asset. This is not a challenge. This is actually very easy to do. The problem here is, how do you trade it? How do you really make it accessible? How do you sell this? How can we find a price for your apartment in every second, 24 hours? That will be the big challenge. For gold, it's no problem. For stocks, it's no problem. For most stocks, I mean, some penny stocks, this is a problem. But for most stocks, this is not a problem. For crypto, it's not a problem. But some illiquid asset, this is actually a problem. And this has to be solved. And then we can look at a completely new world, because everything then that has value can be tokenized.
So if we look at tokenization of real-world assets as something which a lot of people do speak about as these kind of the next step to a digital economy and financial freedom, and just in general, like financial incentives as well to move forward, how far away on a linear timescale would you say we are away from seeing me being able to buy 5% of your tokenized apartment?
Yeah, I mean, because I don't have the idea yet. I mean, of course, no. we can tokenize it, and we can then let's say find a price, like negotiated price. But if you want to buy some parts of my apartment on an exchange, that will be the hard part. This is what I meant. But if you say, okay, I pay you this amount for this, then it's just like, okay, you're buying some parts of the apartment. That would work out. Let's say let's take away these or leave out this liquidity problem. I think this can already be done in 2 years. That you can have chunks of something in a tokenized form, and let's say an over-the-counter deal, that will be fine, I think. Yeah. The question is, do we really need this? You know?
But I think this goes to the point of you saying that you have such small percentage, you can put 3 years into an investment of gold on Bitpanda. Yeah. The idea that you can invest in something at a fractional value, and I think that does expand into tokenization of assets. I think that actually as a concept is so interesting.
Yeah.
And then it's just about what asset would you get?
Yeah, so I think with real estate, it will not start with our apartments. It will start more if you have it's not like a real estate fund or something that is tokenized, or you have fractional, which obviously is the easiest to do. But it will be more like a huge project, let's say a skyscraper everybody knows. So it has an impact, or everybody is participating worldwide. So it's much easier to get liquidity on. It won't be our apartment. So yeah.
We'll have to watch.
Are you gone, or am I gone from the internet connection? Let me see if I still have internet. I do. All right, then all right. I mean, we're nearly done anyways, because I think the whole interview was set up for half an hour, and now we're 29 minutes on. So
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. We lost Jessica, unfortunately. I think her connection was gone. If you have any closing remarks, please feel free and go ahead.
That's everything is super easy and accessible at this time, but that could be the downside. We have all experienced that these things happening in the last 2 months, I think. So no, from my side, everything is fine. Thanks for having me. Please let me know if you want to discuss some things. I mean, in general, for the broad audience on Twitter, just ping me. I'm always happy to discuss things, get input ourselves, feedback. So yeah.
Thank you very much. It was great having you here today. Also, thank you, Jessica. We lost you, but thank you anyways. So let's continue to our first panel of the day. And for that, I would like to welcome the panel moderator, Yael Tamar, who is the CMO and partner at SolidBlock, and all other panelists. Imagine a lawyer, a tax specialist, a real estate investor, and 2 techies walk into a bar to discuss tokenization. Well, this is going to be fun. I can't wait to hear that. Welcome, everyone. Hello, Yael. On to you.
Hi, thanks. Thank you, everybody. Hi, guys. Great to see you all this morning. I have my handy flask of vitamin water. I hope you guys have your morning bar drinks. And we're going to be just having this informal discussion today. I thought the format of a bar conversation is appropriate for tokenization, because what happens when 4 or 5 people walk into a bar and they all have different professions? Well, usually an argument ensues on who's more important. So that's what I want to happen here today. So we have a great panel. My name is Yael Tamar. I'm the CMO and partner at SolidBlock, and we were behind the tokenization of the Aspen coin, which was probably the first commercial tokenization, of a major asset such as a world-class ski resort. So we have as we said, a lawyer, a real estate investor, a tech specialist, and another techie. So I'm considering myself a techie in this situation. And I just want to have an informal discussion of what are the major roles of all of us, right, in this ecosystem. I don't think this is going to happen unless all of us work in concert. And that's why we have a diverse group of individuals here. And I would like to welcome my fellow panelists. Today we have Helmut Baer, Ronald Franco, Gerald Horhan, and Johannes Schweifer. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced any of that. And without further ado, I want to jump into it and ask you guys some questions. And with the first question, I'd love for you to give your background. So my first question is to Ronald. What are the main differences between security tokens and standard securities? And tell us a little bit about yourself first.
First, I'm a lawyer and I'm managing partner with a major Austrian law firm, Lansky, Gansker & Partner, and I'm specialized on mergers and acquisitions and also capital markets. And actually, capital markets law was also for me the entrance door to blockchain, to this entire topic. Why? Because I was looking to find opportunities based on blockchain for capital raising. And this is also why I ended up with the topic of tokenization. And yeah, we are also on a regular basis advising clients in this context, in the context of tokenization and with respect to that, and also with respect to other, let's say, specific topics in this wider practice area of blockchain. To address your question, what is the difference between security tokens and standard securities? I would say first, of course, the technology. On the one hand, we have the traditional concept of securities. There is a certificate, and I would say based on legal framework, these concepts grant specific right to the holder of those securities. On the other hand, we have tokens. Tokens are created in a technical way based on the blockchain technology, and I would say this leads to the major difference between those two, between securities and tokens. This is flexibility. On the one hand, securities, in most cases, if you take, for example, a share, I would say most jurisdictions, statutory law provides in a very specific way the legal concept of a share and also the rights granted by way of a share to the shareholder. If you take, on the other hand, a token, there is a lot of flexibility in how to create the legal concept and what, as regards at the end of the day, the legal position of the token holder. Of course, you can conceive a token in a way that at the end of the day, let's say the legal position of the token holder more or less corresponds to a traditional concept like a share or a bond, for example, or something similar. But you can also, let's say, create new concepts, which on the one hand can combine elements of several traditional concepts or only contain specific, let's say, restricted elements of specific traditional concepts. For example, an equity token, which, let's say, the legal position according to this token is to participate in the asset in some way, but not to have all rights which a shareholder would have in a similar position. Yeah. And I think
what kind of rights a security holder would not have?
For example, information rights or co-determination. It doesn't mean that this is necessarily the case. Of course, it can also be attractive for investors to give them deliberately co-determination rights. But in some cases, investors are interested to, let's say, to participate in an asset, or, and I think this is most interesting for them, to, let's say, participate in the proceeds from an asset, which goes rather into I would say, to a profit participation right. And it could also, let's say, you can also create a token which contains some kind of a profit participation right. But for the issuer, on the other hand, by issuing those tokens, it gives also the possibility, the opportunity to, let's say, to generate equity by also issuing profit participation right tokens. Yeah, it's some kind of a equity mezzanine, how you would call it.
Cool. So I'm gonna leave Ronald back at the bar, and I'm gonna walk over to Johannes. Hi, how are you doing? Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Very good, very good.
I walked over from my home.
Tell us a bit. Cool. Yeah, so tell me about yourself. And on the way there, I want to understand, for an asset owner, what are the top 3 things to do before commencing the process of tokenization, beyond, of course, thinking whether they need it, right? How do they even decide that they need to tokenize?
All right. Well, short introduction to myself. Johannes Schweifer. I'm a chemist, actually. I studied chemistry and did also my PhD in that area. And I'm Austrian, as you might hear from my accent. So it's a must participate at an Austrian conference. Anyway, I co-founded Bitcoin Swiss in 2013. That was the first enterprise in the field of cryptocurrencies and tokens. Back then, we started actually with the story of one of the co-founders saying, "Hey, I have a friend back in Denmark who is trading Bitcoin and having bags of money in his office." Bags of money, that sounds interesting. Also kind of fearsome. So my business,
You're like Breaking Bad, right? A chemist going Bitcoin.
No, the connection was the technology, not the bags of money, actually. So what I always wanted to do was using blockchain technology for other things than just having a stash of money somewhere or just using it for financial purposes. Of course, the primary use has always been, and the primary focus has always been financial assets, like tokenization of equity, as we have heard, real estate, and so forth. But there is more. And exactly this, what is more, is what is interesting for me and also the co-founders of CoreLedger. So what we do here is we created and we run an infrastructure which allows not only to tokenize, but also to do more things, like to document assets properly. Like what Ronald has said, you can have a profit or revenue participation token. That's nice, but how do I know and how can I be sure what rules and rights are set? Where is it written? Is it somewhere in a white paper? This was something which annoyed me very much during the ICO phase, where everybody wrote a white paper and just published it somewhere. At some point, it got outdated and nobody cared. So we said proper application of tokenization, or let's say of blockchain technology into business processes, must include proper documentation. And the tokenization must not stop with just creating some tokens. There must be more, like giving them a unit of measure. Real estate, for example, could be quantified in square meters, not just in tokens, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and square meters can be fragmented into whatever, some pieces. Then tokenization allows you maybe to have some interest rates, positive and negative, or to cater for storage costs. Third is rules and regulations implemented directly in the tokens, and last is trading. So this is what we are doing. And answering to your question, what should I do as an investor or somebody who wants to acquire some tokens?
As an asset
owner.
As an owner, why should I even look into tokenization to start with? And then what kind of factors do I need to think about?
Okay, so as an asset owner, or even before becoming an asset owner, what is tokenization all about? I mean, it allows to quickly move in and out of asset classes. There are only the first the first beginnings of tokens being listed on exchanges, and processes on exchanges are mostly heavyweight. So with tokens, you can quickly also peer-to-peer do some trades or transfers, which is normally not possible with a share unless you have a printed out certificate, right? Like a holder's certificate. Then, of course, tokenization allows to list such tokens on decentralized exchanges as well. So there is the potential, I'm not saying it yet exists, but there's the potential of much higher liquidity. So even trading them against things which are against, let's say, other assets, like swapping one equity share directly into another one. We are launching a concept which is barter concept, which is not exactly about swapping equity against another equity, but about literally swapping apples against peaches. And well, then what I have to care about is then, of course, security, keeping my assets safe, private key, storage, wallets, and so forth. So the whole technical thing. This, in my opinion, is the biggest fear of all want to be token holders and has always been. And that's the reason why a lot of people, actually the big majority, still trusts in the banking processes. In other words,
don't we have, I was going to ask you, don't we have financial institutions and custodians taking care of these things for us?
Sure, we do. And when I'm asked whether or not we will need banks in the future, I always say, well, sure. People are afraid of keeping the assets themselves, having the private key themselves, because if they lose the private key, then the assets are gone, right? So banks have also in the last history fulfilled exactly the purpose of being a custodian for assets, and whether they are traditional assets or digital assets makes no difference. So that's their role. And me as an asset holder, or I as an asset holder, I would be interested in having an institution which keeps this stuff safe for me and also replaces it in case of a loss.
Cool. So I think Helmut is getting bored over there at the bar. And I think the most exciting conversations that happen in the bar are always about the taxes, right? So that's the number one conversation that I'm having in bars anyway. But jokes aside, actually real estate investment is partially all about taxes. A lot of rich people, thinking about the Donald Trumps of the world, who everybody's criticizing for not paying any taxes, but in reality, real estate allows you to structure investment in a way that will either give you a great tax return or a write-off or amortization and so on. So, number one question that I'm getting from active real estate investors, Helmut, is what's going to happen if I invest in this property through a digital security? Am I going to lose all my tax advantages that I get when I invest in real estate directly? So everybody's concerned about the tax implications. So how can we mitigate? Are there any solutions we can imply here? And talk about yourself, please, because that's how we meet people at bars.
Hello. Good morning from my side. My name is Helmut Beer, partner at TPA, tax advisory firm in Austria and CEE, and do mainly serve a number of national and international real estate clients. Regarding taxation, it's nearly the same if I have traditional investment or via digital securities. But one issue to be regarded in digital securities is that I have to account for the documentation so that I can show which transactions did I do, because this might be more challenging than in the traditional form. And furthermore, in the case of digital securities, we made the experience that there is often the question, where do the funds come from which were invested?
Okay, and then what? Let's say they came from my previous exit, right? So I sold an asset. So then what happened?
It's the same as always. If I can show and evidence where my assets are from, there is no problem. And if I cannot show, of course, there's a big problem.
Yeah, of course. So, but how can, as an investor, right? So let's say I have $1 million to invest in a digital security, or I have $1 million to invest in a traditional real estate, right? In a traditional, let's say, commercial real estate, to go in as a limited partner there. Where would I get better tax advantages, and you know, do I lose some of that if I invest digitally?
If I compare the direct investment in real estate via investment via token, it depends regarding the token on the things Ronald said before, which is how is the token organized from a legal point of view, and from this from the legal organization taxation results from. And if I have the direct investment in real estate, it's a totally different kind of investment from a tax point of view, because then I have to consider which legal form do I invest, which legal form performs the rental or trade income. And on the other hand, I have some kind of participation, and taxation is then the result from the kind of participation I have. Okay. Can you give some examples of, you know, let's say token structures and the different tax implications? I'm from my understanding, there's debt security, right? And then there's equity security. Is there, and let's take European jurisdiction as an example, right? What kind of implications would I have? In case of debt securities, we usually have income taxation with in Austria with the progressive tariff, and if I have kind of equity investment, I could have the possibility that I get profit distributions and can account for and can have withholding tax only, which is called Kapitalertragssteuer in Austria. Is that capital gains? Capital gains tax? Okay, great. So wouldn't it be advantageous for investors that are in a higher wealth category to go for an investment that incurs capital gains, because they would incur high income taxes? This is advantage, but it's not always possible from the legal perspective regarding the organization of the participation rights. Got it. Okay. So what I gathered from this is that, you know, you have to have a really, really good 1 or 5 lawyers on your team to do tokenization. My next question is to Ronald, or maybe all of you guys. Is this ever going to get easier? Are we going to standardize this stuff? Are there going to be platforms that say, do this, and not give me a 20-page legal document on how I should tokenize an asset?
If you have institutions which do the tokenization for you, then it's going to get easier, yes. But if you try to do it yourself, then I'm afraid this will never change. It might become a little bit faster, but just as for comparison, we asked FINMA here in Switzerland for permission for a couple of business models, and the longest request so far took 18 months. 18 months, that's incredible. So it's not going to get faster when you ask directly, but through broker dealers who do the issuance for you, maybe faster.
Okay, cool. Ronald, so I'm thinking about investor protections, actually. So every day I'm asked, so as an investor, how can I make sure that, number one, the sponsor is not going to take the money and disappear somewhere on the beach? And that's number one. Number two, how do I know that you guys are going to pay out dividends? And what kind of legal recourse do I have? And number three, what if you guys default And, you know, obviously there is a senior lender on the property. They're probably going to take all the money. But if not, and I am actually entitled to get something, how do I ensure that I get it?
Okay, I think first of all, and this is a general rule I always tell to the investors, not only with respect to an investment in the crypto world, also in general, is it's important for the investor to really understand the functionality of the asset and also of the investment, how it actually works. Because as long as an investor not understands it and it's plausible for him, I think it's not the right decision to make an investment in this. I think apart from that, I think it's the question is how, if we have a real estate tokenization like I think this is what you were driving at. I think it depends on how is the structure built. I mean, in most cases, it's necessary, of course, to have some kind of a legal structure, corporate structure, as a basis of it's a corporate structure with a, let's say, some kind of a contractual relationship between the entity holding the full right in the asset, and in this case now in the real estate, and the token holders. And I think it's important where, of course, if we speak about the legal entity here, where is this legal entity situated, in which country? Do we speak here of some kind of an offshore destination, or is this a more or less secure country? That's a very important aspect. And what is, I mean, how this contractual relationship, where and how is it reflected? For example, if the security token offering was made by way of a public offer, and we have a prospectus, and the prospectus reflects the entire, let's say, functionality and mechanism of the investment, and this prospectus was reviewed by the regulator, was also approved. If we have an entity in a very secure destination, and if, for example, also the entire, let's say, concept provides for, let's say, to some extent, co-determination rights of the investors, maybe some kind of a decision-making process or some kind of a representative of the token holders, which can be nominated to become a member to some corporate body of the entity holding the asset and also acting at the same time as the issue of the tokens. This is, in my view, something which can give, let's say, which suggests that this is a secure investment. Of course, if we have, on the other hand, let's say an unsecure destination, and the documentation which reflects the total, let's say, functionality of the investment is very vague, I think this is something where I would tell to investors, keep your hands off of it. This is totally risky. I think that's in my view. Yeah, this is the criteria.
That's actually why we have organizations like Cointelligence, right? That rates all kinds of investments and investment opportunities. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to the organizers of this event that did a fantastic job, and all the sponsors. I'm really having a lot of fun. I just got a word that Gerald is here. So Gerald is known as an investment punk, AKA. So I want Gerald to introduce himself at the bar. And also, Gerald, while you're at it, tell us what are the biggest factors holding tokenization back right now?
Well, just to introduce myself, for those who don't know me, I'm basically, I always say I'm a life artist. I'm a trained investment banker. I raise a lot of money for real estate investors. I also own property myself, about 200 apartments, mainly in Frankfurt and Stuttgart and Wiesbaden and Offenbach. And then I also have an online financial academy, the largest in Germany, which basically teaches about how to buy real estate, how to buy companies, and how to build businesses, basically. That's what I do. And I'm also on the board of directors of several real estate companies, including a crowdfunding platform, Austria's largest. So I have some, let's say, expertise with respect to I would say, new financings. Crowdfunding is not merely new, but as crowdfunding evolves, you can see the same way as tokenization will evolve. And the biggest problems on this is the consumer. If the stuff is too complicated, people will not buy it. It has to be plain and simple. Don't make me ask, don't make me wait, don't make me think. Because people have to click on it and buy. Like on crowdfunding, it's easy. I mean, there's a lot of things people should read, but most people who do crowdfunding probably don't even know what subordinated means, which means in German nachrangig, and if the thing doesn't work, obviously the money is gone. That's how it works. And the same thing will have to happen on tokenization for this to work. And the challenge will be to combine the complex technological issues and regulatory issues with, on the other hand, consumer simplicity. And those who will do this very well, those will make a lot of money. And then there's another point, that's the regulatory point. I think the only things in tokenization which will probably work, at least in Austria, Germany, will be security token offerings, where there's at least some kind of legal document specifying what is happening and what kind of fees are being taken out of the company to make sure that the people actually get what they signed up for. And this is not a perfect guarantee. Even companies with prospectuses, large and small, have gone bust. Companies with prospectuses where, let's say, the money has been stolen, all kinds of stuff, even in developed nations. But obviously, I think this is going to be some kind of a safeguard which could work, basically. And in the next 5 years, I think there's going to be, I mean, Corona will delay it a little bit, but I think in the next 5 years, this market is going to grow quite significantly because it will allow basically a small investor to do the same thing what I do with apartments. And buying an apartment or buying an apartment building is a complex process where you have to be physically present, where you need a notary and you need to administer all the stuff. And if you can do it in easy form, here's a company which owns, let's say, an apartment building or an office building in Frankfurt. These are the fees, this is the rent, this is the condition where there's, Gutachten, say, testimony from a real estate expert which says, okay, this is what it's worth, this is what basically the repairs, and then you become a shareholder of this, or a bondholder with direct link to being a shareholder, more or less, depending on how you're structured for tax purposes. This is an easy sell. And on most current real estate trust and KG models and real estate AGs, it's not an easy sell because it's some kind of a complex portfolio which nobody understands. But if there's one building, here fees, and then you become a shareholder of this building, that's something which people will understand. They can go there and say, this is a house we want to share it. And then you have a new category of investors. If you want to sell a piece of real estate as a developer, not just people who buy an apartment, or institutional and bureaucratic buyers like family offices and pension funds who buy the whole building. For rich people who are also complicated usually if they buy the whole building. You have a new version, you have small investors who can sell a building. That's going to work. As long as it's easy and to some extent at least has the resemblance of being secure. What happens in the end is involved.
Thank you. I learned a few things, including a few new German words. Thank you for that. So guys, does anybody else want to jump in and talk about what needs to happen? So Gerald said basically that it needs to be super easy to understand these financial products, as thinking about them as a kind of a participation right in an asset that is easy for people to understand. Is anything else that we need to do? Maybe with respect to, I don't know.
May I correct you? It's not going to be a participation right in an asset that's going to be more difficult. It's going to be a shareholding or a participation right in a company which owns a real estate asset.
It sounds big. In a company that owns an asset. Yeah, absolutely.
Participation in the assets, that's complicated because you need to go to the land registry to change anything. That's difficult.
Sure.
But if you have a joint stock company, you can have easily tradable securities. I mean, you can already have it this now, but it's legally very cumbersome. And if you this process, standardize this process, and make it easy for people to use, like an app. They can pay by PayPal or credit card.
Yeah.
Just like with Google, you say this and this, accept. I probably have never read it, understand it, but I accept it. Then you pay 5,000 euros or 10,000 euros or 1,000 euros. And then I have a participation holding in the office building Mainzer Landstraße 133 in Frankfurt. And then when I come to Frankfurt, I own part of this building. That's going to work.
And then you knock on the door of the building and you're like, hello, I own this building.
Well, that doesn't help too much. Because
may I jump in here? Because this is exactly the point, right?
Of the company, and he is the legal representative who can basically go into the building and collect the rent.
Oh, okay. That's very appealing. That's very appealing to people.
This is that simple. Everybody will understand this.
Yeah. No, thank you for that important distinction and clarification. Definitely, there's a legal structure that makes it participation in a company, which makes it definitely a lot easier and streamlined. Is there anything else that needs to happen, guys, for this market to really take off, as everybody else has been predicting?
Well, I mean, the market itself is estimated to be at around 2 or 3 billion, and not talking about the volume of assets being sold. That's much higher. It's just the revenue or actually profit being made by companies working in that space. Nonetheless, well, it must become more understandable. That's the point. So I totally support what has been said before. Shouldn't we fiercely debate? I mean, I underwrite every word that has been said. Yeah, it has to become more understandable. Exactly like you click on a website, search through offered assets, click on the one which is interesting for you, pay for it, and of course understand what you're going to get and what you're going. I mean, what you're going to hold, right? Which rights and maybe even responsibilities come with it. Yeah, for the average person, by the way. Somehow streaming stopped.
Hello.
Technology is always, that's the thing, it has to work.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. If basically, as soon as the things are complex and don't work, people won't buy. And if there's a delay, let's say every second a payment website is delayed, 30% of the people who want to buy jump off. It's very simple. Or sometimes in 50%. So it has to be the most easy thing. Then people will buy it. And the problem is with the whole crypto scene that it's way too complex. Most people have no clue. And let's say most people who invest in Bitcoins as an asset have their Bitcoins at a broker, like Kraken or Bitpanda or whoever, some of the offshore brokers they might not go to because of money laundering reasons and stability, because they don't understand the whole technology. I mean,
I witnessed this firsthand.
Obviously, some people, the technology freaks, will love it and see a ledger and here, and most normal people want it simple. It has to be like a brokerage account. And then, legally it is, because basically if you have security, with a security prospectus, basically it is the same. It's not that different. It's just, hold differently and more easily tradable, but the legal point of view as a lawyer here can probably confirm it's the same.
No, I confirm what you said, but I think it will also be very much a task of marketing in the context of any kind of a security token offering, not to, in a traditional way, market, let's say, the asset or the token representing the asset, but also to explain the concept, because we have, let's say, a wide group of people who are not familiar even with the term of tokenization. And so if you come out with those, with a security token offering, I think it will also be very much a task of a good marketing strategy to find ways to really, let's say, explain this in a very simple way to the investor, to both to understand the functionality, what is this token and how does it actually work, and why, if I have such a token, I have some kind of a legal relationship to the underlying asset. On on the one hand, and also, of course, to explain the attractiveness of the investment.
Got it. So what I gathered from this is that somebody needs to make an app that's a combination between Tinder and eBay, and that will be the winning app for real estate. So, guys, I really wanted to open this up to some questions from the audience, and I understand that they're being formulated right now and they will be soon asked via message to me. So I'm waiting for that to come. I think that we've touched on some really interesting points about who needs tokenization. You know, what obviously investors are looking for ways to invest, and you know, companies and real estate owners need to consider different things to get this going and to actually get on board. So one of the biggest impediments for us, you know, at Solid Block, when we're talking to developers and real estate owners, is basically, you know, they're thinking, why should we invest money in this process? You know, we've been selling non-digital securities, or maybe getting investors the regular way. Why should we put in even 20,000 euros, even 40,000 euros? Why should we invest in an expensive PPM, right? Private placement memorandum. What is our biggest added value? Liquidity is not there. We don't know if we're going to be able to, to sell, if people are going to be able to sell these shares. What would you guys tell these non-believers? And anybody can go.
First mover advantage.
Yeah, elaborate.
Oh, sure. I just didn't want to consume too much time. Simply, there has been evidence of having the advantage when you are first on a marketplace, like what also companies here in Switzerland did when they occupied the space of being brokers and traders, over-the-counter traders for Bitcoin. Such a business, which was first pocket money, then grew into the millions and billions. So the same could happen actually through real estate companies who are the first on the market to establish such processes. As I said before, you don't have to do it yourself. You can go to somebody who has already done it and has obtained the license for doing it for somebody else. So this, or even selling the know-how, this is an advantage which I would recommend any business to consider trying it out first for, at the moment, small money. And if it doesn't work, okay, 20,000, 40,000 invested, you spend more on SAP or something, right? So
right,
it's
for
not big
sure.
money.
So
And
who is this ideal investor though? So sorry, who is this ideal customer? What is the profile of the early movers in this market?
Well, basically, I think the main idea is that a developer has a new customer group. If you're a real estate developer and want to sell a property, it has to have a certain minimum size, because otherwise the whole cost of this don't work. So the property has to probably be between 10 and 15 million in size, which is larger apartment building or a larger office building. In most cases today is. And if Mrs. Lagardère prints more money, it's even going to go quicker. And instead of having just two possible clients, one being institutional investors, and the second one is being people who buy individual apartments, both of which they're not that many. Institutional investors with a lot of money, they're mostly complicated, and there's not so many. Even people who can afford apartments, they're also fewer than people who can afford putting 1,000 or 2,000 euros into something. And then you have a whole new class of customers. And I think the whole thing will be arranged like crowdfunding via some kind of platforms. And then the developer will come to the platform and say, I want to sell my property to a large group of investors, small investors, and then the platform will organize everything. And then if it's done well, the small investors will buy. That's, I think, how this will work.
Cool. Is this going to be open to retail investors anytime soon? What do you guys think? Especially the lawyers on the panel.
I think it's already open to retail investors, of course. I mean, the question is, I mean, in theory, yeah, because of course you can sell it. But the question is, and I think this is the topic what I addressed before. I think The question is how to market something like this at the moment to retail investors and to make this to let's say to explain to them how it works and also why it is attractive for them. But of course, as regards the, let's say, the legal framework, I mean, of course, you can of course, make a security token offering by way of a public offering now, and thereby sell those security tokens to retail investors now. That's the point. I think
is there
for
advantage
them,
though to make a public offering? It's complicated. The prospectus costs a lot of money. The reporting
that you reach, of course, a very, very large group, thereby giving you the opportunity to generate higher proceeds in the offering. Of course, this makes sense if you know in the beginning that this will turn out to be successful, and this is what they said. This goes hand in hand with a strategy how to sell this at the end of the day to the market. But I strongly believe that this is a concept of the future to make a security token offering publicly, to thereby really go also to the retail investors. And for them, it's the opportunity, because it opens for them a new investment classes. Those small investors, for them, for example, real estate, this was not an investor class which was in practice available for them, because it was necessary to, let's say, to provide or to have sufficient capital funds, to invest into real estate. But this now opens also for those, I call them now small retail investors, up real estate as an investment class, because they can, by way of investment into tokens, also with relatively small amounts, they can make investments. And it's not, I would say, I would not restrict this to real estate only, but I think that at the moment, this is, of course, the most relevant asset in this context.
No, of course. But when, don't we have already vehicles for companies going public, the IPO? You have public REITs that you can buy into as a retail investor. Is there really an advantage of doing a security offering through a public vehicle?
Yes, because the problem is the REITs are complex to understand. They usually have executives, you often fill their own pockets, they have huge administration costs. Let's say it's much simpler. There's one building, and there are clear fees, and then you're part of the assets. And probably, I mean, that always depends on politicians as well. You might have, like with crowdfunding, you might have a specialized law, which makes the process a little bit easier and less expensive, so that you can do such offerings in a more standardized way. Because, let's say, a classic company prospectus is hugely expensive. The charges huge fees. The insurance carrier for the prospectus charges a huge fee. The prospectus examiner charges a huge fee. This is not good. But real estate is much more standardized than a company offering. So if you do it in a way, like the Investor Informationsblatt for crowdfunding, perhaps a little bit more detailed, then and the standard risk procedures, and you probably have some kind of template which you can use. And then you have some kind of limits what people can invest, like with crowdfunding. And then I think this would work much better. And as you saw with crowdfunding, there was a new crowdfunding law enabled to allow the crowdfunding platforms to raise money from retail investors without a complex prospectus according to certain terms. And that could be the same thing for real estate tokenization, where people can become a shareholder in a piece of real estate. And I think
so you're talking about a single asset REIT essentially, or a single asset offering. Obviously right now that's not an option because it's a very, very expensive process. There are, as far as I'm aware, there are some crowdfunding opportunities in Europe for 5 to 8 million euros, which I think is great. I have some questions here from the audience, actually. Beyond awareness about tokenization, how can this be regulated through nations' borders? So basically globally. For example, if we tokenize a building in Austria, and how can we make that accessible to UK investors?
I think you can easily compare this to the situation which we already have in the European Union. In the European Union, we have a capital markets and stock exchange law, which is standard, which is harmonized. So we have a legal framework which applies with only, I would say, very, very small deviations in all EU member states. And of course, this legal framework, this has differences to the, let's say, to the US capital markets law, but it has also a lot of similarities. And I think in theory, it would be possible to also, let's say, introduce harmonized, let's say, at least guidelines which apply to all these concepts. I would say on a global level, this is very ambitious to think about something like this at this very moment. But first of all, I think it makes sense to think of something like that to introduce guidelines or rules, yeah, which would apply to these concepts not only on a national level, but in particular on a level within Europe, yeah, the European Union, and then to extend these concepts. To think globally, yeah, at the moment is very ambitious.
Cool. So I have some non-believers here. No, I'm joking. There's some people that are quite skeptical about real estate being traded like stocks or Bitcoin. And I have to agree with some of the skepticism because real estate is not, real estate investors are not day traders, right? So they're kind of more stable, long-term buy and hold kind of guys, hodl, if you will. So why do you guys think that there will be liquidity in the market, and why would real estate tokens be traded like stocks?
They won't be traded like stocks, they will be traded like bonds. They are also a bond-like instrument in the end, like a real estate is a piece of future cash flow. And in contrast to bonds, it has an advantage that it's somewhat insulated, let's say less prone to inflation risk. A bond is, you know, Mrs. Lagarde prints the money. You know, the bond is worthless, more or less. In real purchasing times, real estate is better. The disadvantage is that real estate is subject to a lot of political regulation. It's a disadvantage. And it will be more like a bond, not like a stock. It's not like hugely traded. You buy it, you collect the surplus between rent and loan payments and administration costs, and then you can also sell it.
Right. So essentially, the trading will be based on your anticipation of the profit that you can get, and also your kind of risk appetite, right? Early investors will probably get better conditions, right, and better interest, and then you can switch them up in the capital stack with people who are coming in later and getting, you know, probably some other types of terms. By the way, is that type of mechanism possible with prospectus? Let's say to offer different types of dividends and interest based on the level of the project. That's a question, I guess, to the lawyers in the group. Can we have a variable interest?
Of course, this is possible. I think you can, as regards to prospectus, it's important, of course, to describe this in a proper way, and that you, of course, that the scheme which is chosen for the capital market prospectus is the right scheme, but there is no reason why this would not be possible to describe in a proper way in a prospectus. So the answer is yes, of course.
Very, very cool. So to summarize, we have here a new asset class and a new methodology for fundraising that is super flexible. That is the future, because it will allow people to trade an illiquid asset. We have some possibilities for tax advantages based on the type of token structure that we choose. We're looking at some interesting solutions to overcome the lack of tokenization in the recent years, and number one being user experience. As with any product in the world, we have to focus on making the buyer very comfortable, very safe and secure in order to jump in the game. So I want to thank you guys for this fantastic panel, thank the organizers, and I hope to speak to all of you, one-on-one to learn from you even more. So now I'd like to give the mic to whoever is coming after us. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Yael, for this very interesting panel. It's certainly very cool, I would say, to hear the opinion of people who are skilled in specific fields, very different from each other. So, moving with our track, our next speaker is going to focus on the world of non-fungible tokens. Let us welcome on stage Robby Young, the CEO of Animoca Brands. Robby, welcome. The stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. I wanted to speak with you today from my from my living room. I'm based in London. Our headquarters is in Hong Kong, and I'd like to talk to you about non-fungible tokens. A little bit of background on Animoca Brands. We are a mobile game developer by background. We've been around for about 10 years. We are a public company, and our focus has been on casual and mid-core games to a global audience. We have operations around the world. In Europe here, our presence is primarily in Scandinavia and to a lesser extent in France and the UK, as well as Germany. And then we have large operations in North America and Latin America as well. What I'd like to talk to you about, though, is blockchain games. Because blockchain games is a very exciting, I think, new subsector of the overall game industry. And it's something that we have been focused on at Animoca Brands now for the last 3 years. This began, actually, I think this category was sort of kicked off by a pioneering firm who is a close working partner of ours called Labs that many of you might be familiar with, called CryptoKitties. CryptoKitties came out in 2017 and I think was really a watershed moment for combining these two ideas of blockchain and games together. And I think it really showed us what was possible when we think about how we could create great game experiences by introducing the technologies and tools that are available with blockchain to allow players to have new types of interactions, new types of value, and new types of, most importantly, gameplay fun, essentially, in their games. So to talk specifically about non-fungible tokens, as many of you may know, and forgive me for sort of starting from the beginning, but just under the assumption that some of you may not be familiar with non-fungible tokens, essentially, blockchain, technology was created originally for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is a fungible token. So by fungible token, what we mean is Bitcoins are all the same. They are stores of value, and one Bitcoin can be traded with another Bitcoin, and the holders both still have one Bitcoin at the end of the day. Whereas a non-fungible token is based on the Ethereum platform. Specifically, they're usually ERC20 tokens or ERC721 tokens. And these tokens are unique, right? And so the idea behind this uniqueness is that it's possible to ascribe other types of properties to this token and to create things that have limited quantities. And that's the most exciting thing, because if you go back and you think about the creation of the internet has always had one fundamental assumption, and that fundamental assumption has been that everything can be infinitely copied, right? So we go to the internet and we download content, we download voice, like audio files, video files, text and graphics, and all of those files, that process of downloading, all that content can be copied infinitely. And so the same thing happens when you think about gameplay, right? When you're playing in a game and you have artwork or characters or things like this that are of value to you as a player, all of those can be copied infinitely. So if you're playing in for example, a battle game, and there is a particular sword, legendary sword that is very highly prized, there's nothing to say that there aren't an infinite number of those swords. So when you spend $10 to buy that sword, it may be that the developer makes thousands and thousands of these swords, And so players are really just sort of investing their money on faith in these games and for the time that they spend to enjoy themselves in these games. Now, what non-fungible tokens do is they allow the idea of true digital ownership. And true digital ownership, I think, is what transforms the concept of this flow of content from the game to the user. Because with true digital ownership, which is achieved because these non-fungible tokens being on the blockchain are fully secure and verifiable and able to be authenticated, so therefore the ownership trail is authenticated all along the way. The idea behind the true digital ownership is that the value of that token passes from the developer to the player. So when the player buys a piece of content or invests in a piece of content, they actually own that content. And that is a fundamental difference between how the relationship between the game and the player are today and how they are, in this future of blockchain games. So today, if you go and play a typical online game, what happens is you are essentially renting the content from the developer. The developer supports the game, you spend money in the game, you may acquire armies or racing cars or swords or whatever it is in the game, but all of those items in the game remain inside the game universe, and at the end of the day, they only exist supports the game and the game stays live, right? And so I think many have experienced in the past where a developer may, for example, stop supporting a game because it's run its life cycle and they've moved on to another title. And then essentially that investment that players have made in the game disappears. And so this is the turning point where we see the application of non-fungible tokens. Because if all of those items in games are tokenized as non-fungible tokens, so the sword, the shield, the horse that the soldier is riding on, the soldier himself, if all of those are non-fungible tokens, those can be items which the player can purchase in the game, but then truly own. And from a technical standpoint, those are tokens that are kept in the wallet of the owner. And so what this means is that as you play the game and invest, because the majority of games these days operate under the freemium business model, so people go into the game and it's free to play, but they spend money in the game to buy upgrades and items. As they spend money on those items then become part of their wallet and something that they truly own. Now, why is ownership important? And why is this type of ownership, this true digital ownership, groundbreaking compared to the existing $100 billion game industry? We think it's interesting because what happens is it transfers that power of ownership from the developer to the user. And when that happens, several different exciting things occur. The first thing is that from the player standpoint, it empowers the player, because when they own that item, they can then choose what to do with that item. And in this case, there are two main options of what they can choose to do with that item. One, most blockchain games now have the ability that for users who own items in their games, they can place those items into a marketplace alongside the game, or into a third-party marketplace like OpenSea, for example. And I know Devin is on the next panel after me and can tell everybody about what the great things OpenSea is doing. So they can take their items and place them into a marketplace and make them available for sale, right? So that's the first exciting thing, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. The second thing that they can do with those items is they can take those items and take them into other game environments, provided that those other games also support those non-fungible tokens. So for example, if you are driving a Formula One car in our Formula One Delta Time game, which you own, then you will be able to take that car and bring it into the Sandbox, which is a user-generated content metaverse that also supports tokens from our Formula One Delta Time game. So you can use your content that you have invested in and bought in multiple game titles. Now, because you can use the content in multiple titles, and you can take the content and put it into a marketplace and make it available for sale, this means that that content that the user has purchased may actually have a lot more value to them to begin with than content in another game where they actually don't have any control over what they can do with that content. And I would hypothesize that that means that because players can see more value in the content, that they will tend to invest more in that content, okay? They will probably increase their spending up front. Because imagine if you were a player and you were spending, you know, $10 or 10 euros a month in your favorite game, and right now, all that money just goes away, right? You basically spend the money, you play the game, you enjoy yourself, but you never get any of that money back. Under this scenario of non-fungible tokens that I'm describing, that investment goes into the game, but should you become tired of the game and you want to move on and play some other game, then you can take your items and put them in the marketplace, make them available for sale, and get a return. Now, this could be a positive return. You know, you might have speculated on some very rare items that have a lot of value to collectors, and you could make money. But on the other hand, even if you don't make money, maybe you just sell your items for a discount, 50% discount, at least you get, and the fact that you get something back, I think, will encourage players to spend more money in games. One of the reasons that we're so excited about this as the future of gaming is because also we think that this technology is the perfect marriage between blockchain and a wonderful application in the world of gaming, because gaming is obviously one of the world's, the world's largest entertainment medium. So games, there's over $120 billion spent every year in games, and the audience of people who play games is truly global. I mean, everybody plays games in every country in the world, and if you have any question about that, just ask 5 people you know who plays games on their smartphone or on a console at home, and everybody will raise their hand and say yes. And gamers have already been having this habit over many years of spending money online, so using their credit card, making e-commerce purchases to spend money in games, and buying virtual currency inside games. We call them diamonds, we call them lives, hearts, whatever you call them. They spend money on virtual currency, primarily, in mobile gaming, for example, in the Apple App Store and the Google Play. And so this habit of buying virtual currency and then spending the virtual currency inside a game is very ordinary for gamers, and they don't hesitate to do it. And this is important because when you're thinking about onboarding an audience into a new medium, the fact that these consumer behaviors do not have to be taught is very important, because it means there's a lot less friction to bringing large numbers of users on board. Now, blockchain gaming is still in its relative infancy. As I said, this was really kicked off with in sort of the early days by the Dapper Labs team on CryptoKitties in 2017, and their title is still going strong. We have a collaboration with them. Actually, we just launched an artist series with Momo Wang of new kitties this past week, which has been very successful. So they're going from strength to strength with CryptoKitties. But this is only a 3-year-old industry. And so at this stage in time, we're a relatively small part of the overall global game industry, but I think we are at the forefront of innovation. And I think what you see in the blockchain game industry today is a very exciting focus on collectors, because collectors are the early adopters in true digital ownership. And so I think a lot of the focus for us as a company has been on leveraging our experience working with third-party brands. We are the largest licensee of third-party brands in the game industry, mobile game industry. And so we are working with companies like Formula One, like Atari, you name it, across the board, to license their content to place inside blockchain games. Because when you think about the idea of true digital ownership from a collector standpoint, the fact that we can actually create rarity is very exciting, because rare items tend to have value. But rarity and value can be created in many ways. It can be created by the fact that it is a limited edition licensed collectible. So Lewis Hamilton's 2019 winning Formula One car, series winning Formula One car, has value because Lewis Hamilton won the championship. Now, we as the developer of F1 Delta Time can say, okay, we are only going to issue 5 pieces of Lewis Hamilton's car, and the fact that there are only ever going to be 5 gives them a certain collectible value. Now, on top of that, collectible value can also be created by the players. So if you think about it, also we have a game that goes alongside that. And whether or not you're driving Lewis Hamilton's car or just an ordinary Formula One car inside the game that's not particularly collectible, if you as a player win lots of races in the game and in the game community, then you're essentially becoming an esports champion inside the game. And when you do that, then the car that you drive, that you have modified and customized over the years and have won all the race series inside the game, that becomes collectible because there is an esports provenance to it, not just the sort of real world sports provenance of Lewis Hamilton. So in that way, because it comes to this idea of what many in the industry are calling play to earn. So it gives the opportunity to players to actually show off their skill sets and make their achievements inside the game actually translate to real money, because the fact that these are all non-fungible tokens allows a seamless transition from virtual world to real world from a financial standpoint. So there are also groups of people who are very interested in the idea of digital collectibles as investments, because maybe they are super fans, for example, of Formula One, and they own physical collectibles. So they own, drivers' helmets or autographs or photographs, things like this. And so they want to add digital collectibles to their range of things that they love to collect. And so they invest in these collectibles as well. So from the game developer standpoint, we see a very broad audience, because the people who are interested in acquiring non-fungible tokens are game players who are interested in playing the game, collectors who are interested in Formula One because they are passionate about Formula One, and also investors who are very interested in this idea of non-fungible tokens. And similar to art investors, let's say, they may see a new class of investment that is exciting because it can increase in value, but during your period of ownership, you can also have the enjoyment of a beautiful work of art and a product. So in this case, a digital collectible that you can use for hours of enjoyment inside a game, while you wait for its monetary value to increase. So I think this opens up huge parameters in the game industry, because ever since games went from being a paid game where you bought a DVD or a download up front to freemium games where people spend money to acquire things in games, we started to build virtual economies inside games. But the problem has always been that those virtual economies have been completely centralized by the developer, and every game had a different currency, and it didn't really make much sense from the player standpoint. Now, thanks to non-fungible tokens, we have the ability to essentially have a global, completely freely traded currency amongst all games. And that's very, very exciting to us. So I think, that's really kind of what I wanted to talk about non-fungible tokens today. You'll get a lot more in-depth look, I think, from the next panel, including my colleague Sebastian, who hopefully can tell you a lot about the project that he's been focused on, which is called the Sandbox, which we feel is one of the most exciting blockchain game opportunities coming out in the market this year. And otherwise, I think thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions if there's still time.
Thank you very much, Robby. Actually, Daniel here has a question from you. So, Daniel?
Hey, Robby. It's a pleasure to meet you. I wanted to ask you one quick question from me and from the audience, since like I'm a gamer and it all makes perfect sense to me, and I really believe in the power of NFTs in gaming. So there's one question from the audience. Which time frame do you see for the first blockchain breakout game to the mass market? And I will implement my question into this one as well. Do you think that the big game developers, like people behind Counter-Strike and everybody, do you think they are willing to jump on the NFT train someday, because eventually they will lose some money, since people will be able to trade skins, or you know, like Fortnite bringing out a skin for Halloween, for Christmas, and everybody doing special limited buy-ins for skins and everything. Do you think they will jump on the train or sooner or later, or do you think there has to be an independent game developer to bring out the first big mass market blockchain game, and then the big ones jump on the train? What's your opinion here? I would really like to hear it.
So I think in terms of timing, I think it depends on how you define mass market. So obviously CryptoKitties has been quite successful within the blockchain game community, and to a larger extent the crypto community as well, because it appeared early on the radar of the crypto community. I think, though, what I'm always telling people is, even though the blockchain is well developed now after several years, we have not hit what I call our Angry Birds moment yet. The moment at which everybody in the world is playing a particular, game that has really tapped into the zeitgeist. I think that moment is coming soon. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but it is definitely coming in the next 2 years, in my opinion. That's just me personally. And the reason for that is because I think the only thing that has limited the appeal of blockchain games so far has been there have been technical hurdles to onboarding over the last 2 years, and really in the last 6 or 9 months, we've started to see some great approaches to solving those technical issues, so that onboarding can be as simple as downloading a mobile game from the App Store. Now, in terms of looking at the big game companies, I think the big game companies will get into non-fungible tokens eventually, because it will be inevitable. But as you know, big game companies always like to see that the market is there, and then they follow the market, because they have the ability to leverage their resources to take a big position once the market is established. I think if you look, for example, at the transition from console and PC games to mobile games, many companies that were very big in PC and console took a very long time to move to making mobile games. And it was really the force of the market and hundreds of millions of users that eventually brought them to mobile. But if you think back to 2011 and 12, how many big game companies did you hear saying, well, this small mobile device just doesn't provide the same game experience as a console, and so players are not going to be interested? When in fact, it actually just turned into a different experience, not really a better or a worse experience. So I think that we will see a very large adoption in blockchain games and NFTs, and I'm hoping this is going to be a breakthrough year. One of the great things I think about participating at the ground level in this industry is that literally every 3 or 4 months we see big strides, both commercially and technically, not just internally, but obviously from all our friends and colleagues across the blockchain game business.
Thank you very much again, Robby, for your great talk on non-fungible tokens, which is a true game changer and is actually also the topic of our upcoming panel, for which I would like to welcome the panel moderator, Jürgen Hobart, who is the founder of Tokenization Limited, together with all other panelists, Sebastian Bourget, who is the co-founder and COO of The Sandbox, Devin Fencer, who is the co-founder and CEO of the OpenSea, Andreas Pettersson, who is the Managing Director of Capacity Blockchain Solutions, and finally, Caroline Wendt, who is the Director of Mintbase. I'm looking forward to what you have to say, and welcome everyone.
Hi guys, and welcome very much to our panel, which is about non-fungible tokens and are they the true game changer? And I think we have a very, very interesting panel here. And I would just really jump deeply into it. And I would like to start with the Austrian on the panel because I know him very well. And he's like a person which is in this crypto space since a very long time. And I first came across him as a Bitcoin maximalist. So I'm wondering, so how did he end up in the game when it's all about non-fungible tokens and stuff like this? So Andreas, could you give us a little bit of an idea how your journey was?
Hi, thank you very much for the nice intro. Yeah, it is true that I've been a Bitcoin maximalist, but only because there was only Bitcoin at the time when I came into the scene. And we founded Bitcoin Austria as a non-profit organization in 2011. And I think it was actually the first non-profit organization worldwide that was founded in that space. Of course, everybody had to be a Bitcoin maximalist. There wasn't even Litecoin around back then. What I see is that the utility that blockchain technology can provide has really expanded massively, and it became more useful over time. If you look at, you can send money around, that is true, but in my opinion, money is not real. Money is just a construct that we use to model other things and to allocate resources efficiently. And that makes a lot of sense, but in itself, it's a relatively simple application. And of course, some people will disagree with me. That's why I looked out to go into more complex use cases of blockchain quite early on. And if you remember, maybe in Austria, there was a very active Bitcoin scene. And of course, I worked also at Mycelium, where we developed a great wallet that's being used by a lot of people. And then I was involved in a large number of blockchain projects. And that naturally, because the ecosystem is evolving in that direction, leads to the Ethereum ecosystem, which is right now the strongest ecosystem in the blockchain world. And that's why I'm enjoying the freedom of being able to develop this stuff.
So you see the topic around NFT as like an advanced level of blockchain?
No, it's definitely just an application of blockchain technology, yeah. And we will see a lot of more different applications. But I think right now NFTs are really the hot topic because it has so many great analogies from things in the real world that people are used to things in the digital world. And this is something that can be leveraged to build the mental models of the users correctly.
Yes, I very much enjoyed the panel before us where it was about, like security tokens. And as I'm personally involved in both worlds, it's a complete different topics you're discussing. And like in the NFT space, I think we have not so much barriers, which allows great things to do. And thank you very much, Andreas, for the introduction into that topic from your perspective. And, as we have heard before, that games are using NFTs very heavily. So and as I know Sebastian as well as person, and I know his history in the mobile gaming industry. So Sebastian, for you, what made it click for you? Because I think your background is not in a traditional cryptocurrency universe, like, for example, me or Andreas. You are more coming from a perspective of from the gaming industry. So how did you came across NFT? How did you make the decision to make them a core component in your whole ecosystem as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So, my background as an entrepreneur, it's been almost 13 years now, and Sandbox is my fourth company. I started initially in the space of peer-to-peer with the BitTorrent technology, which is one of the very first application of decentralization. Then we moved into user-generated content, allowing users to upload photo, video, and music in the cloud and share them with their friends. And then in my third company, Pixel, since 2011, I've been doing mobile games, specifically games which turn the players into creators, into makers. So user-generated content where players can make their town or can make their own worlds and levels with the Sandbox franchise, which was born in 2012 indeed on mobile, but now is becoming this decentralized virtual gaming platform on the blockchain, on the Ethereum blockchain, where creators can make voxel model games, turn them into NFTs, monetize them on the blockchain. And essentially, the idea of using non-fungible tokens really match with the true digital ownership features that is attached to the technology behind. And when you match this NFT with user-generated content, it really makes sense. Like, it's very powerful. It's not just about about developers making their own game items and selling them to users who then users can own them and resell them on secondary marketplace or potentially use them into other games. It's really like, it is my creation, and my creation, I have this psychological attachment. It has a value, intrinsically a value because I made it, and also a value because potentially it can be reused in games. It has a utility value and more use case. And we've had with Sandbox on mobile over 40 million players who made 70 million creation. It was amazing. Like, they literally spent hours or days creating content, and there was literally no way for them to monetize this time and this creation in the platforms the game was, like the Apple Store and the Google Play Store back then. So now that anything they can create, they can actually sell them through NFTs and ERC 1155 standards on the marketplace is very powerful.
So Sebastian, basically for you, it was like you were seeing a use case in your application, which you more or less could not solve with existing technology, and then like somehow came across NFT and was saying, okay, this NFTs or the concept of NFTs offers exactly what I'm needing to be able to service my users what I want to service them. Is that correct?
I think it's a good summary. We've seen competitors like Minecraft or Roblox trying to offer still some monetization scheme, but it's way too centralized. Like, they as the central authority define like what is going to be the revenue share you get, how you monetize, what you can do and cannot do, such as like you cannot take out your creation outside of the platform, transfer it to another user, sell it on other marketplace, etc. So it's not like free market. Those platforms have been acting as like centralized walled garden, trying by any way to control and limit their user into the platform, which we find is very restrictive, and where the disruption comes in with Sandbox and NFTs.
Thank you very much. And I would like to go to Caroline, because I think you have a very interesting concept going on, which basically, you know, like when I first entered blockchain, it was all about people who were deep in technology or they were trading. And even if you wanted to, like, I can remember, like, it was like 15 months ago, if you want to interact or do something in the NFT space, you had to have like a deep understanding about code and stuff, like people like Andreas only had access to it. But I'm thinking like what I was seeing like with Mintbase is like you guys are really like opening up this topic of NFT to a much broader vision. Can you give us a little bit of an introduction how you're doing it? Because I think you're doing it very different than a lot of other ones.
Yeah, definitely. So at Mintbase, we created this platform to really allow anyone to create NFTs. And what we really want is that those NFTs are not just collectibles or not just like something that sits on my wallet, but we want those NFTs to be useful. So we really want maybe like the ticket like is an NFT and it gives you voting rights at the conference, or maybe the NFT will make your character run faster in the sandbox game or somewhere. So we really like focused on the utility of those NFTs, and we are trying to bridge the gap of like normal, like mass user adoption, and we're trying to constantly onboard people who are not familiar with crypto. So we just launched our credit card integration. So basically, people can now buy and sell NFTs in over 134 different currencies. So this is like really huge for us as well. And this is why I see a lot of adoption happening.
Sorry if I'm interrupting you, but how do you see it? Because I think you very quick realized like NFTs is something like which is a great potential, and what you are doing here is like very unique because, as you said, you're already looking how to implement it and make it as easy as possible for average users. So why did your company choose this direction? Is it because we were seeing all the traditional crypto blockchain things were too nerdy or too non-focused on easy access?
Well, the original thought of Mintbase was to enable anyone to create value. Like, we now live in this current financial system where the banks tell us, okay, you can only work together with Stripe or with Plaid or something. And blockchain is really incredible because anyone can really create value and sell NFTs. And NFTs, why did we choose not to go into the gaming and more into ticketing and art and stuff? It's basically, we didn't choose that. It's our users who came to us and they asked us, hey, can you please build ticketing for us? Can you do this? Can you do that? So it's really community driven, our platform. So yeah, we didn't choose it. It was more like a pull. Okay. No, I really enjoyed it. And now we are coming to Devin from OpenSea. And Devin, I think I came across OpenSea was it in the end of last year, something like this? And I even shoot you an email, or no, I was sending you a Telegram message because when I saw what you guys are doing, I was like, they are figuring it out. And I think it was even in the early days where I was thinking, okay, you guys were going a complete different route, doing something in the blockchain space without the typical ICO rush, because we have seen similar projects which are wanting to do what you're doing. And how did you guys came across this topic, and how was the ride so far? Because I'm thinking for me, OpenSea is kind of this umbrella on top where everything somehow feeds into, if I'm formulating it correct.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me on the.
And sorry, because I know for you it's very early in the night.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, it's a little bit early over here, but yeah. Thanks so much for having me on the panel. It's really nice to be here. Yeah, I guess a little bit of kind of history and why we started OpenSea. I think my co-founder and I were pretty excited about some of the more non-financial use cases for blockchains. So CryptoKitties was super fun and interesting, and I think we kind of just followed what we thought was kind of weird and wacky at the time. It was kind of strange that people were buying and selling these digital cats for so much money. And so we were just like, okay, maybe we could build something that would be useful if more people started building these assets. And I think when it started out, no one actually, or I think we're still kind of figuring out what really works with these new types of assets. I think it's kind of an iterative process of people running experiments, seeing what resonates with people, and then iterating and running more experiments. But at the time, it was even more uncertain. No one really knew the answer, and so I think we kind of built OpenSea as more of a generic platform that would be useful for all of those experiments that people were running. So now I guess
what areas do you see at the moment? We know we have been talking now a lot about gaming. So what other areas do you see on your platform are having traction?
Yeah, so I think gaming is definitely probably the biggest at the moment. So virtual worlds like the Sandbox are sort of providing this kind of foundational layer where you can have true ownership of land and true ownership of items, and then things can kind of be built on top of that. So I think it's early days, but really exciting for those sorts of gaming related use cases. Trading card games is another game use case that we're seeing a lot of activity in. So games where, if you think back to Magic the Gathering, there was the gameplay around Magic, but there was also the whole economy around Magic the Gathering with, dozens of different sites where you could trade your Magic cards. And then the other two categories that I think are particularly interesting at the moment are digital art. So obviously Mintbase is very involved in that, and it's basically just people who are creators putting their art out there, seeing who will follow them and purchase them. But we're definitely seeing lots of excitement around that. Both original creators going and creating their own art, and then also going through platforms as well.
Yeah.
And then the last one is these sort of naming service type projects. So Ethereum name service and Unstoppable Domains are both working on kind of more human readable ways to access your account on Ethereum, or to host a website using a decentralized domain name versus just a .com name. So that's another area that I'm particularly excited about.
So basically, I think you really quite well summarized up what's going on. So if I want to throw the topic back into the panel, so are there any other use cases you guys are seeing popping up beside this? And I think like Mintbase, from Karen, you have like spoken about ticketing and stuff like this, and this is where I personally see also to like a big opportunity. So is it something which is like only ticketing, or could it be like, even as you said, like I don't know, like even like your driving license be an NFT which is minted, but would be not through Mintbase, but I think this concept of like universities minting certificates or something like this. So did you guys had discussions with someone in that area, or experimented around that?
Definitely, but when we come to this area like certificates, and it's like very a very regulatory like area. So we are discussing with some people, but right now we see more use cases in like ticketing, art, photography, and I have a friend who now she's a Reiki healer, and she wants to offer distance healing. Like so you can buy an NFT on our platform, and then you get like a distance Reiki treatment. So that's really cool. We are also looking to create sound NFTs, so that a person who buys the sound NFT will be able to download the sound file. So this is the direction we are heading. So we are more like focused on like immediate use cases.
So basically, when you're talking about sound NFTs, that sounds to me like you're opening like an extremely large market, because as we have seen, like as Devin spoke as well, like we have seen in the digital art space where people sell digital art. And it's at the moment, it's like for me, myself, I'm into new media art since a very long time. And I was realizing is like, well, the medium, how art is transported at the moment for NFTs is still very limited. So something like video and sound is definitely like a very large opportunity. So how is it like for you guys there? Do you have any specific projects going on, or users say we provide the standard and see from where we are going here?
Yes, we have users who like specifically request this. Like they come to us and they say, hey, it would be really cool if you would offer this feature and this feature. And we are a team of 2, so we cannot like build this within like 2 days or something. But we're definitely community driven, and we have like people asking for that. So that's really cool. And we like really see the NFT of the future almost like a membership. Like for example, now with Netflix, right? You have the NFT, and this like gives you access to watch those kind of movies, or maybe Spotify. Like this is like an area that's going to be super interesting and fascinating. And now with like a fiat, like anyone can buy it. So it's
this is exactly as well what I've seen. Like when I first heard about NFTs and I talked about more online oriented use cases, I was thinking like all the SaaS business, like software as a service business, they could all run on systems like NFTs. It's a little bit complicated than just explain it short, but it follows the very same concept. And there's one question for me, which I'm coming across just recently. And for me, it was like, I don't know, maybe I'm too much of a Ethereum fanboy. But why is the topic of NFTs so strong on Ethereum platform? Like, Sebastian, did you guys made a specific decision to use Ethereum as a platform, or are you saying, okay, we started here and we're also going to look into other opportunities and other blockchains which are technically allowing to issue NFTs?
All right, there's two questions in here. So the first one is, I think historically, NFTs are born on the Ethereum blockchain. It came with CryptoPunk, then afterwards CryptoKitties at the end of 2017 with the ERC 721 standard. And now it's enlarging with new ERC 1155 standard, which we contributed to with Engine and Horizon game, which is even better adapted for games with millions of items rather than just one single unique item every time. So that's this historical reason that Ethereum as a blockchain allows smart contract and has structured data for NFTs, and NFTs then took as a form of expression, as a form of communication, as a proof of digital ownership, which can then be used into, like Caroline said, for music, for ticketing, for potentially even digital passport, digital identity, because every NFT is a unique token that carries a metadata and then can be trusted across different applications. And I will talk a little bit more later after how even we are seeing new layer of this permissionless use of NFTs with games building on NFTs from other games, etc. Now, why at Sandbox we built on the Sandbox blockchain, on the Ethereum blockchain, is also because historically, as a game studio and also as a blockchain company, you are building on the technologies that your engineering team is the most familiar with. And our lead blockchain architect, Ronan Sanford, started back in 2015 or 16. He's well known among the community of Ethereum developers. He contributed to several standards there. And essentially, Ethereum back then was the main platform with the largest developer ecosystem and support for building that. So because it takes time to create good games, great games, it's not just a matter of days or weeks, it's literally a matter of months and years. We are now on Ethereum blockchain because it's been 2 years we started building Sandbox. We are about to launch a public beta by the end of this year. And we've grown our team and our skill in the technologies that we're the more knowledgeable into, which was and is Ethereum at the moment. Doesn't mean that new blockchain will not emerge. There's a lot of interesting value proposition on the market now with Flow, with Zaya, with Gartesi, etc. And I do think that it's just like phases. So we are going to see more and more dApps build on those eventually, but it will take a few months before those dApps comes to market and show us like good use case from a user-facing point of view. But it's quite amazing also because I'm also the president of the Blockchain Game Alliance. I get to see a lot of projects involved into gaming and blockchain, and a lot is happening outside of Ethereum as well, and it's quite exciting.
Yeah, I was shortly involved a little bit in the EOS community where they trying to establish a standard on digital items, but somehow it seemed we're falling apart because of technical issues. Andreas, I would like to continue with you because all the companies we now have talking about are like, it's experimental, it's startups, it's creative people we are trying out. But I think the use case you are involved is basically, to be honest, if you look in the terms of how many Ether addresses are owning an NFT in the use case you host, they are basically the top leaders, despite there's not, so how do you, because I see the project you're involved like as a reference project. So it's a real company, which is very traditional. How do you make them, or how did that idea come to use NFTs?
Yeah, so using NFTs was very obvious when we saw what's happening with CryptoKitties. It was a very big peak of attention, and everybody was thinking of, okay, how can we leverage this? And we quickly identified that this whole NFT as a standard thing can really lift off and become its own ecosystem. And we should, if there is something that can be built upon that, we should definitely do that. So I wanted to add something also to your previous question, how NFTs are being applied to in other areas. I think ticketing is right now also very much taking off. I see a lot of projects here. Even the city of Vienna did a project also together with Christian Baumann and Capacity where we built a culture token. It's a voucher system for tickets that you can then use to get access to certain cultural institutions. And you see that even very traditional players or players who want to get on with the technology and want to show that they are on top of the field, they want to also get into this. So the point that you were making before about such a large number of users that we onboarded to the blockchain ecosystem, so that you can see that a bit critical, of course, because not everybody involved, not everybody who bought a Cryptostamp actually did on-chain transaction. In fact, it was a very small minority who did that, and I think those were the hardcore fans and the people who really got the concept. But on the other hand, we made a lot of people familiar with the topic of crypto in general. Yeah. And that was very interesting. So we saw a large range of questions that people had. Let's say, what is crypto? How do I use a wallet? What is like Ether or what is Bitcoin? And what can I do with this stuff? And so we educated a lot of people. But it also showed me that we are still in a phase where certain tasks are just very hard, especially when you look at the onboarding scenario for users, what you have to do. Yeah. And I talked to a lot of people about that problem. I think this is right now one of the major challenges that we see in onboarding new users. What needs to be done here? Just 12-word backups and explaining all these things and so on. That we have to find a better story here for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to talk with sorry, I forgot the name. With Devin from OpenSea, because what Andreas was meaning, like user experience, user interfaces, and what I'm seeing at the moment at OpenSea, I call it's the platform itself is very user friendly and user experience oriented, despite you still need to have this typical decentralized wallet login. So how is your company positioned there? So it's like, okay, at the moment, we just serve like those people who are familiar with the technology, or you guys are thinking, okay, can we build there a different ecosystem? Do we build there something different? So what's your position on this at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think it's kind of the question that every company faces in the blockchain space is kind of how much do you build yourself versus how much do you kind of wait for the rest of the ecosystem to mature. So to make it more concrete, you can go and kind of build a new wallet if you're not satisfied with kind of the current wallet offering. So if you look 2 years ago, really the main wallet on the market was MetaMask, and MetaMask is obviously a great wallet at the time. It was somewhat difficult for users to onboard onto it. But that being said, if you kind of waited till now, you would have gotten new wallet experiences for free, and you kind of wouldn't have to build them yourself. So I think some of the companies that built everything themselves, there could have maybe just waited. So we're kind of taking the approach of waiting and sort of building what we're really good at, which is building marketplaces, while the rest of the ecosystem works on all the different pieces. So the different pieces that people are working on are.
Question. Like you were mentioning, you're building marketplaces, and I know like Animoca is also to invested in your company, if I have it correct. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I was seeing recently like Animoca that they bought like Quid, which is basically for me when I was seeing, so I know Quid and I know OpenSea, and for me they are very similar. So Quid was like a complete centralized solution versus you a complete decentralized solution. Is this something like you are in exchange with those guys and try to figure out to find a middle way? Because for me, like what you are doing is basically in crypto terms a DEX. And you are not the Binance, basically. And if you look in traditional crypto space where trading is one of the main things and onboarding is done by users, and my cousins are trading, they don't have any MetaMask or anything. They just go to the exchange, put in their money, and they trade on the exchange. In the worst case, they send from one exchange to another one, but they not really have themselves an Ether address to do that. They do it like exchange to exchange, which is for people involved, like they say, don't do that, but they do it because they don't know it otherwise better. So do you see there any synergies, or are you in exchange with them?
Yeah, we definitely we frequently talk to Animoca. They've been great partners on all the projects that we've worked on. So from the Sandbox to Formula One, and we've also recently been discussing the Quid acquisition, which is super exciting. I think to answer your question around the exchange stuff, I think there's a really interesting open question around, will decentralized exchanges be the main place that people trade NFTs, or will there be sort of what we saw with tokens, where there's this kind of ecosystem of centralized exchanges? I think the jury's still out. I mean, one kind of interesting thing to think about is the fact that there wasn't really any viable decentralized exchange technology when we saw the kind of cryptocurrency and ICO wave. Now it's still in the early stages, but there is somewhat more viable decentralized exchange tech out there, and we're kind of working to get it to the point where it's as like where the user experience is similar.
So maybe your opinion is if there would have been Uniswap before Binance, Uniswap would have won, something like this.
Not necessarily. I think like fungible token trading is a very different animal. So I'm not making that claim. But I think if you look at kind of what are the characteristics that are required for non-fungible tokens, they're pretty different than what's required for currencies. And maybe there's, who knows? I actually think that, it remains to be seen, because there's a lot of things going against decentralized exchanges, such as network throughput, but there's also things that make centralized exchanges tricky as well. So, for example, having to transfer your asset into a centralized exchange, if you're transferring a bunch of different NFTs, that's actually oftentimes a more friction-rich experience than just connecting your wallet to a DEX and saying go for it. So I think there's trade-offs.
I think that's also a different motivation involved if someone is buying an NFT versus someone is going to an exchange and want to trade money, like the motivation behind it. Because I know it, like a friend of mine, he really likes like a digital artist, and he basically forced himself to understand how to board on to buy artworks from him online, because he was now releasing artworks online in a digital form on OpenSea. To get this, it was very interesting to see what the motivations are where people are moving in. And I would like to talk
quickly, maybe on behalf of Animoca brands, to give a better description on what is Quid and what is the intention behind Quid, because you compared it to OpenSea, but I do believe those are quite different animals, I would say. Like Quid is a mobile application, which is like an app where you can collect. So you have digital collectible coming from different IPs and brands. They have like something like 300 different IPs coming from Marvel, Disney, etc. So, and you buy those characters. You can view them in 3D on your mobile. You can collect complete like collection, sort of like digital paninis, and you can trade with other users and exchange, but in a centralized manner with no way of selling them, etc. Now, what is quite important is that there is already a huge existing user base on this app that is used for years to collect these things, and they didn't necessarily look into how can I resell it, trade it outside, etc. And bringing blockchain technology behind is opening potentially a greater adoption of the technology and a great use case. This is
so basically you see it there's everyone is locked in you see it like everyone is locked in the ecosystem, and now through the technologies they're going and open, and then it can spill over into other stuff.
I think it's the intention, but like with the content that is available, it's quite different. On one case, this is like IP licensed digital content within a mobile platform. So working specifically in, if you're familiar with how IP license work, usually you define the terms of like geography and platforms. Those are some of the key components of any licensing contract. So the App Store and the Google Play Store is a very well-defined platform, and the content doesn't go outside of it. On OpenSea, I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're dealing directly in a B2B manner with game developers and other token issuers who are creating content either by themselves and then allowing to trade on OpenSea, or creating their content directly on OpenSea as a primary marketplace. But you're not acting as like an IP licensor where OpenSea directly is going to license to brands to make their own content and sell it. So I think that's the difference between this marketplace and being really like a content creator and provider.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanation. Caroline, you were giving us already like some very interesting different other use cases for NFT. So, and as I figured out, like it seems like you are a company which is very listening to the users. So what was the most craziest request? And I'm assuming like the same question as well then to Devin, of NFTs you got, or people, you know, I experienced it myself. Sometimes people come across with crazy ideas. So do you have anything, a story to share about that?
Let me think. A crazy request from a user. Okay. I mean, up until now, everything is pretty okay. Of course, we have to take down like some markets which are, you know, displaying naked body parts. So that's, yeah, considered maybe as crazy. But in general, like there has been no exceptional request. I can't remember something extraordinary. Maybe OpenSea or Sandbox.
Devin, did you came across some projects? I think for you cannot control it, because as far as I know it, everything is basically accessible through OpenSea somehow in one form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there have been some crazy ones. My mind is blanking at the moment. A couple interesting things that have happened over the last year. One, we've definitely seen our first kind of fraudulent NFTs. So if you think about kind of now that there's all these minting platforms, Mintbase, Rarible, our minting tool as well. You know, anyone can kind of upload an image and put metadata associated with it. So you could take an existing NFT and make a fraudulent NFT. So something that looks exactly like one of the other ones and then try to sell it. So we kind of have some systems in place now that make it harder for people to actually get away with that. But we have seen a good number of instances of that. The other kind of interesting ones that we've seen recently, I would say, advertisement NFTs. So people basically selling ad space on their website as a non-fungible token. So you buy the token and then you get the rights to put, you know, your banner on one of these websites. And some of the websites are pretty cool. They do it in a really nice way. We've also seen like subscription NFTs where you buy the NFT and you kind of get a subscription to a monthly package of other NFTs, which is pretty cool. Lots of really interesting games out there that are kind of you know, creative. So there's like Flower Patch, which is like you're growing. It's kind of like a Farmville type game. There's Zed Run, which is like horse racing. So there's all sorts of like you know, indie games that are doing stuff.
I think Zed Run is a very good example. I saw the video they produced first, and it was like extremely promising. And I was thinking, so they figured it out, and like that will hit the bomb. And now it's basically you're racing pixels, and it's like the mechanics behind it is still not at the level it should be. But when I was seeing the concept, I was thinking, oh my God, like if they do this right, this is getting crazy. And it's like it's opening a whole new universe. But yeah, it's I think for me, it would be like really funny to see like I would like to spend really like only like days to figure out what are people trying to do there in new ways. Because it was mentioned this term like fake NFTs. I mean, it's very funny. So we're very, very young in that space, and we already need to talk about fake NFTs in a trusted environment where we're saying like NFTs are very secure. So Andreas, I think that's a topic I think we have discussed. It was as you had this experience as well that people were trying to like fake the Cryptostamp. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. So when we started the project, we immediately saw somebody minting their own smart contracts that were completely unrelated, and they completely copied over all the data that we put in there. But I mean, from let's say an authenticity perspective, there is one source of truth that actually works relatively well, that is Ethereum name system. So if you have an NFT that doesn't have an appropriate ENS record associated with it, then you should be very suspicious. And that's why we use like Cryptostamp.eth for this project, and some other ENS names as well, like 21hats.eth. I recently, it's in the pipeline of being launched. Yeah, please, if you are concerned about authenticity of your NFTs, please try to figure out what are the ENS records for it, because there you usually find something interesting. But it's not, I mean, the physical world is not free of fakes. I mean, if you think of any branded items, they are certainly faked, but I think NFTs can give you some really good tools to make the job even harder for people to fake it.
Yeah, Sebastian,
if I may, on this topic, I think like because NFTs carry a value, and this value comes from either their scarcity or their utility, it's quite natural to see like appearing fakes, copies, or people trying to take away the value or part of this value somehow. It's a great feature from the blockchain that we can track the authenticity directly through the address of like from where it was minted, the wallet address, etc. But it doesn't mean, to your point, that there cannot be a secondary market where people would accept and value copies of an NFTs. Like you said, like even if something like if a piece of art, like the real one, that can prove it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and it's unique, etc. But still, if I want it and I'm ready to pay $10 or $100 for the copy, and it makes me proud to own that copy, like or own like the copy of this Louis Vuitton bag that looks like real and potentially can be used or accepted by some game developers, even if it's not from the true source. Like, who can prevent you to do that in the end? As long as there's like a buyer, or as long as there's someone that is ready to give or grant value to a token, whatever, if it's a copy or not, I think it's opening an immense world behind, and it can be opportunity. It can be also questioning like, how do I protect the value, and where is this value sentiment?
I think
like one point what I would like to throw in the room is a little bit of an extension of NFT. So where I see like everything coming together is exactly like this. I call them kind of metaverses. You know, like if you talk about Decentraland, CryptoVoxels, Sandbox, which you involved, Summum Space. So do you guys see that they are a catalyst for this whole NFT space, or they were a catalyst because, you know, people were selling virtual land? It sounds always so crazy. So virtual properties and NFTs played a big role into that, like for you as well, like Sebastian. So do you think like that?
It's true, but I think we are still in a pioneer industry, and we don't know for sure from which app, from which application of NFTs will like this massive success kickstart. Like when CryptoKitties appeared, nobody would think that like digital cats with unique traits will become such a thing and boom out. And what I'm waiting for is that moment in the industry where we have these new Angry Birds, this new Candy Crush or Temple Run, to compare it to what happened in the mobile game industry around 2007 and 2008, where it really propelled like this exponential growth curve of people buying the device and starting to play on the device.
So basically, you're waiting for this catalyst event.
Yeah, exactly. And there's games, there's stats that are coming to market this year, including Sandbox, that potentially could be that catalyst. But who knows? Like, at the end, these are the users who are going to judge and decide what they want to be so enthusiastic about and ready to jump in for.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with you, and I think like because you know like I know you're like in close contact as well, like with CryptoVoxes, for example. And how do you see are these metaverses or are these different platforms are working together? Because what I see in the NFT art space, it's a competition. So there's like super against original known variables. So they are a little bit fighting for the same customers versus what I'm seeing like in the metaverse space. It seems like more collaborated oriented. Is that correct?
I think so as well. Typically, we are all members of the Blockchain Game Alliance, Somnium Space, Cryptovoxel. Yeah. We are often talking together at conference. We're even offering our tool VoxEdit for creating voxel model and potentially using them across all the platform. I think the metaverse is a concept that by itself carries the idea that there will be many virtual worlds and platform behind that compose it. It's not just one metaverse and one big winner company, whether it's on the blockchain, decentralized, or it's centralized with Fortnite, with Second Life, or even the Oculus Quest Rift virtual world, etc. But it's going to be a series of virtual worlds that potentially can be interconnected through the use of NFTs. And the beauty of Cryptovoxel is that it has found its niche already with artists, and it has this organic growth and adoption. So the team, a small team, but very reactive to the demand of their users. It really builds what the user wants, and it grows like this. It's like similar aspect, which I really find amazing on both.
It's a really interesting concept. How for me personally,
behind.
Exactly. For me, it's like what I'm liking, and I think this concept where success is coming is exactly like this: that you work everyone should work together instead of against each other, because as you said, like I have completely the same feeling. Like I'm more a believer of like there will be specialized services, and it is not the winner takes it all. So maybe Facebook will come out with something like this, and I think they are planning since years something in that environment, but so far I haven't seen anything useful. And as you mentioned as well with CryptoVox, it's like literally Ben lives, I think, on New Zealand time. So in the morning he logs in and there's like a list of requests from people, and basically then he's like, okay, today I'm doing this. It's like very like user driven development, and it's very interesting concept for me. I like it how it is structured in a way, how he's doing things. It has its downsides as well, definitely, because how to explain it, there are some major bugs sometimes. But it's really very interesting how this is driven. So, like, how do you see it like further as well? Like, if we talk about this topic, so do you see in a way, like real use cases? We talk a lot about like digital art. Ticketing is also the virtual. So, but what would be other use cases? Like, could it be that I'm buying in 2025 my new BMW and I'm getting an NFT token associated with it? So what do you guys think about it?
Yeah, well,
Definitely.
I think we're really only seeing the start of the whole development. So what's definitely going to happen is that NFTs have a more life cycle oriented, let's say, experience, that you start off with a product, you use the product, and you keep it maybe as a memory. That's something that is relatively straightforward to implement. And the other thing that's kind of tying into the discussion of how platforms are competing with each other is I think that NFTs themselves will have more metadata associated in the near future, where this metadata can then be extracted and be taken in by the engines, by the virtual worlds, how you can combine them together. And I think that also has a lot of utility. Think about the avatar that you can take from one world to another world, where like a profile picture, when you set up a picture on a website, you don't have to redraw the whole thing again. You can just upload your existing picture. In the same style, I think you will be able to take your NFTs with you through the different virtual worlds. I think that's definitely going to happen.
Caroline, you wanted to talk as well about that, I'm thinking.
Definitely. So when it comes to use cases, I wanted to mention one more thing. So we talked about like fake NFTs, right? And everyone like is worried about buying a fake NFT. So identity is really the solution to this. Like we need to inform the buyers that like we really need informed buyers that they only buy NFTs from I don't know, people who have a $3 account or something like that. So that's also really important. Like NFTs should also mean something. It should unlock a function, and we are just touching base. Like we are right at the beginning of what is possible. Like ticketing is a beautiful use case for us, for example, because it beautifully displays that you can buy a ticket. The ticket is more than just a collectible or just like a QR code. Like you get so much more with it. So we are right at the beginning. You could literally like build Airbnb and just tokenize everything. Like there's so many opportunities, and yeah, so much to come. It's such an exciting area to be in, and also like working together with other platforms like OpenSea and all the other players in there. It's really like fruitful, and I think like everyone has their own specific niche. Like Mintbase, for example, is at the beginning, at the creation of NFTs. You make it really easy for people to tokenize things. Then maybe people go to OpenSea, they resell it, they're really good with their markets, and maybe we exhibit the NFT in our CryptoVoxes gallery. So this is really exciting.
Okay, so one question.
I think we are. Sorry. It's really like what we are seeing right now. We are still pioneer in the space, and we only see the base layer of what NFTs can do at the dApps level, like whether they are game items inside a game platform or they are used like Caroline just described. But what I start to find amazing is how like DAO and other games offer a meta gameplay, not only using their own NFTs or token, but actually leveraging the existing NFTs of other games. Like maybe you've heard about this meta boss game where actually you play based on your actual ownership. So it reads your wallet, it checks which NFT you own on different platform, games, services like ZNS, Ethereum Name Service, Sandbox, CryptoKitties, etc. It builds you a certain skill point base, and then you use it to play on their platform. So I really enjoy that. This kind of like project pushing the barrier, showing that this is just the initial layer for more creativity, more permissionless creation.
So basically what you're talking is show me your NFTs and I tell you who you are.
It can be, not necessarily tie your identity to what you own, but I like leveraging the idea of like what you own can enable you some gameplay mechanics. And
it's really interesting what you're mentioning, because you know there are two concepts. So there are those people who are putting all the different NFTs on different addresses, and then are those who are putting it all in one contract. And it's like I know some guys, and it's like, guys, you have like, why do you do this? No, I'm proud to have this and I want to show it off. You know, like there's as you said, there's already like, I mean, we all know like for example, recently like one guy like his name is Whale Shark appeared in the scene. I think everyone in this room here knows him, and he just like, it was like crazy, and he has everything in one address, and you're going there and saying, oh my god, it's even basically he curated. So I find it very interesting. So basically, as the buyer becomes also the curator of kind of a display room, let's say it this way.
I think we have some very interesting things to reveal in that regard as well, just for displaying collections. Not spoiling too much yet.
Well, in 20 minutes, or what?
No. In 5 weeks or so.
I can imagine. No, one question for me is like as well. So would we see in the future, like 2030, we bought the plane and the plane ticket is issued as an NFT? Is that a potential future?
Definitely, I think so. It's more secure. Like, so we have a redeemer. We built a redeemer, and you like check in by doing a Face ID, for example, on Mintbase. So it's safer than right now that you just scan a QR code and then you go through airport check-in. It's really not safe at all. So I think NFTs can really like be used for airline tickets and much more.
Yeah, for me, it's like to be honest, for me, I see like we had digitalization, and then I call something which is tokenization. And I'm like, this whole NFT space is for me like a very component. Like, to be honest, like I'm more excited about this topic now than I was about 2 years ago about all this traditional crypto blockchain things, to be honest, because I don't know, maybe it's because I'm more like a creative oriented person, or because I'm not like a programmer, so I didn't find the other stuff so interesting, but I always found the concept interesting behind it. And now it's like basically, okay, all these things I was like having in mind and talking are finally happening. So it's like very great to see things like this, definitely. Devin from OpenSea, like, where do you guys see your future? Like, you will become like the eBay of digital items, or what's your greater goal in that game?
Yeah, I think, well, you know, I definitely think there will be lots of different marketplaces for non-fungible tokens. You know, there'll be marketplaces that live inside of the game. There'll be third-party marketplaces that serve specific use cases. But I do think there's also a lot of value in kind of a generic marketplace that spans across lots of different asset classes, and, you know, has this sort of passionate group of users who get value from the trading interface that it provides. So that's kind of I mean, it's really hard to say exactly what direction we'll go in, but that's kind of direction we've taken at the moment, is providing that core user base with the set of like trading features that they would want from a really powerful like trading platform. So right now it's still really basic, but we're going to be launching a lot of new features over the coming months to make the experience of kind of figuring out what price to set for a particular item, like finding the right price for a particular item. What?
Something like a price discovery tool, or?
So like better charts, graphs, filters, all of that type of stuff that you can imagine would be pretty useful. So that's kind of the direction we see it going.
Yeah, how do you see it as well? Like for me, the question is, so how you think you are? Are you more like the eBay, or are you more like the Shopify in the mid to long term?
Yeah, I think we're kind of in the middle right now, and I would say in the short run, like I think being an eBay kind of works well because you know, it helps these kind of small projects get off the ground. In the long run, maybe helping projects build more sort of customizable marketplaces. That's something that we do a bit of now, but I don't know the answer. We're kind of in between. And we'll kind of move.
If I may, I think Devin is a little bit too shy about like the importance of OpenSea in the ecosystem. Like it's more than just a marketplace or a system for developer. It's actually almost like a discovery destination. Like I would call it like the new kind of app stores where you also discover and want to play games by checking the items first and the value of those items. And so they have this capacity to drive an audience to many new dApps, which I find quite amazing as well, and part of this new decentralization.
True.
Okay, not a problem. I was waiting for the timer, but I didn't saw it. Okay, sorry. Like we were running over time, and the instruction was a timer is running. So as we started late, I didn't see the timer. So like very like short, one word from each one, or 3 words for each one. Did I call it already?
One word: moon.
Moon.
That's my word.
Okay.
Moon.
Sebastian?
Yes, moon also, and you'll find something announced today about it.
Okay. Caroline?
Maybe a rocket.
Okay. And Devin?
I'll go with moon too.
Okay, perfect. So I go with rocket because to fly to the moon we need a rocket, and maybe the rocket is NFTs. Let's say it this way. Okay.
True.
Thank you very much, guys.
Shovels, of course. Shovels.
And I hope we will have a chance to see us in person sooner than later.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Jürgen, and all other panelists. Next session is something that I'm really excited about, and I'm sure you are too. So without so much further ado, Austrian Post is here to present Cryptostamp 2.0.
Herzlich willkommen zu unserem Talk. Heute sprechen wir über das Thema Cryptostamp. Im Intro haben Sie bereits eine kurze Übersicht über die Blockchain-Marke erhalten. Diese hat übrigens im Vorjahr für Furore gesorgt. Heute starten wir den Pre-Sale für die Cryptostamp 2.0 und zwar direkt im Anschluss an den Talk. Ich darf an meiner Seite begrüßen Stefan Nemeth, Leitung Produktmanagement und E-Business-Filialen, sowie Patricia Liebermann, Leitung Produktmanagement Philatelie. Beide natürlich von der österreichischen Post. Starten wir gleich mit Ihnen, Frau Liebermann. Jährlich verausgabt die österreichische Post plus minus 50 Sondermarken. Und eine davon war im Vorjahr die Cryptostamp. Erzählen Sie uns ein bisschen was dazu.
Das ist korrekt. Also wir verausgaben 50 Sondermarken, aber vielleicht beginnen wir von Anfang an. Was sind Sondermarken überhaupt? Wir sprechen da von exklusiven Briefmarken in limitierter Auflage. Und unter diesen Briefmarken befindet sich immer eine besondere technische Innovation. 2006 zum Beispiel hatten wir sogar eine Briefmarke mit Meteoritenstaub drauf, der Milliarden von Jahren alt war. Also wir experimentieren ein bisschen herum, versuchen immer kreative neue Ideen einzubinden und hatten zum Beispiel auch schon Marken aus Glas, Holz oder weiteren Materialien. Und 2019 war die Zeit einfach reif. Ja? Also sie war reif, um etwas ganz Neues, Digitales zu machen. Und so kam uns die Idee zu Cryptostamp.
Perfekt, vielen Dank. Der digitale Wandel hat also auch Einzug in die Welt der Philatelie, der Briefmarken gehalten. Herr Nemeth, wie sieht die digitale Strategie der österreichischen Post aus und wie sind Sie zu dieser fantastischen Idee gekommen, die klassische Briefmarke mit der Blockchain-Technologie zu verheiraten?
Ja, also die digitale Strategie bei der österreichischen Post hat ja schon vor längerer Zeit begonnen, ganz klar mit dem Internet, dann mit einer App, dann aber auch mit unseren Selbstbedienungszonen und so schreitet das immer voran. 2016 gab es dann einen Strategiewechsel, was die Philatelie und die Briefmarken betraf. Man hat das von einer eigenen Einheit direkt zu uns in das Filialnetz gelegt, um Synergieeffekte zu nutzen. Und als wir das damals angetreten sind, haben wir gesagt, naja, irgendwie müssen wir auch die Philatelie versuchen, ins 21. Jahrhundert zu bringen. Und da brauchen wir auch die Digitalisierung dazu. Begonnen haben wir dann mit einer eigenen Briefmarken-App, All About Stamps, wo alle österreichischen Briefmarken, aber auch von Deutschland, Schweiz und Liechtenstein, also dem Dachraum, Dachli-Raum, abgebildet sind. und haben dann gesagt, wie schaffen wir es aber da noch mehr daraus zu machen. Und parallel dazu haben wir 2016 begonnen, Bitcoins in unseren Filialen zu verkaufen, mit einem überwältigenden Erfolg. Und da kam dann die Idee, können wir nicht sozusagen einen eigenen Briefmarken-Coin herausbringen. Und so entstand die Idee und das gesamte Team der Philatelie, der Österreichischen Post, aber auch der Digitalisierung mit externer Hilfe hat dann diese Idee kreiert von der Cryptostamp und das Endprodukt ist ja bekannt vom letzten Jahr.
Perfekt, vielen Dank. Frau Liebermann, wie werden denn Briefmarken heutzutage produziert und was war das Besondere an der Produktion der ersten Ausgabe der Cryptostamp?
Danke für die spannende Frage. Das ist sozusagen ein Blick in die Produktion, ein bisschen hinter die Kulissen. Also üblicherweise ist es so, dass ja Briefmarken immer auf Briefmarkenpapier produziert werden. Das heißt, in 99% der Fälle ist es so, dass wir immer Papier verwenden, außer eben, wie schon angesprochen, manchmal mit anderen Materialien, wo wir arbeiten. Und bei der Cryptostamp ist das Besondere, dass wir eigentlich zwei innovative Ideen damals miteinander verbunden haben. Und zwar einerseits das Scheckkartenformat, um ein bisschen auch diesen Gedanken des Bankenwesens, von einfach Finanzen auch ein bisschen mitzugeben. Und andererseits haben wir das wirklich als PVC, 100% PVC-Variante gemacht. Und ja, das war sozusagen einfach mal die Idee zum Produkt selber. Das Besondere an der Cryptostamp, und viele wissen es ja nicht, es sieht zwar aus wie eine Kreditkarte, aber in Wirklichkeit ist es eine wirkliche Briefmarke. Man kann sie nämlich in der Mitte knicken und den einen Teil kann man tatsächlich zum Frankieren von Sendungen verwenden.
Das ist wirklich toll. Ich muss sagen, sehr, sehr außergewöhnlich. Und da stellt sich natürlich die Frage, wie haben denn die klassischen Philatelisten, also die Briefmarkensammler, auf dieses überaus innovative Produkt reagiert?
Naja, ich würde mal sagen, fast schockiert. Aber ich würde da gerne noch ein bisschen zurückgehen, nämlich wie hat es überhaupt begonnen, das den Philatelisten näher zu bringen. Und wenn so eine Briefmarke verausgabt wird, muss zuerst in einem sehr großen Komitee beschlossen werden, wo auch sehr viele traditionelle Philatelisten drinnen sitzen, dass diese Briefmarke überhaupt auch verausgabt werden darf. Und da kam es zu einer großen Überzeugungsarbeit schon im ersten Schritt, damit es hier zu einer Zustimmung kommt. Und im weiteren Schritt haben die Philatelisten dann, als sie verausgabt wurde, natürlich nicht über die Funktionalitäten Bescheid gewusst. Sie waren etwas überfordert, sie wussten nicht, wie damit umzugehen ist. Nachdem aber innerhalb sehr kurzer Zeit der Wert von diesen Marken ums Doppelte, Dreifache und bei der roten Marke ums Mehrtausendfache gestiegen ist, kam dann natürlich dieses spekulative Sammeln mehr in den Vordergrund und plötzlich gab es sehr großes Interesse auch unter unseren traditionellen Philatelisten. Also zusammengefasst auf Ihre Frage würde ich sagen, am Anfang sehr kritisch und am Schluss doch voller Überzeugung und voller Freude, dass es jetzt hier auch eine Briefmarke im 21. Jahrhundert gibt. Es hindert uns aber nicht daran und es ändert auch nichts daran, dass wir unser traditionelles Ausgabeprogramm auch weiter fortführen.
Ich darf einen zusätzlichen Gast bei uns im Studio begrüßen, und zwar Julia, eine Kundin aus der NFT-Szene. Sie kennen die Cryptostamp ja bereits vom Vorjahr. Erzählen Sie uns kurz, wie war denn Ihre Kauf-Experience?
Ich habe das Glück gehabt, meine ersten Stamps sogar noch in der Filiale zu ergattern. Das waren die letzten, die sie hatten, obwohl es gerade erst angelaufen war. Die nächsten habe ich dann von Freunden, die sie aus anderen Filialen noch ergattert hatten. Dann habe ich noch welche privat gekauft und bei der Philatelie telefonisch. Also ich habe so ziemlich alle Möglichkeiten, wie man Stamps erwerben kann, genutzt, um mir meine kleine Sammlung zusammenzustellen. Benutzt habe ich sie in erster Linie zum Sammeln für mich selber. Dann habe ich ein paar verschenkt nach Südafrika, in die USA, nach Asien. Den Großteil davon hebe ich mir auf. Eine habe ich im Geldtaschel und benutze sie als Ethereum-Wallet. Feedback zum Design. Ich finde es super, mir gefällt das Einhorn, passt auch sehr gut als Wappentier der Ethereum-Community. Ist auch sehr cool, dass es eine Künstlerin designt hat. Zum Plastik muss ich sagen, bin ich jetzt nicht so der große Fan davon, aber es bietet sich natürlich an. Also ich habe Verständnis dafür, dass die Edition 1 aus Plastik war.
Und was erwarten Sie sich von der Cryptostamp 2.0?
Von der Cryptostamp 2 erwarte ich mir, dass sich die Post ein bisschen mehr Gedanken macht, zum nicht nur Material, sondern auch mehr zu befriedigen als nur die Sammlerleidenschaft, vielleicht ein bisschen den Spieltrieb anzusprechen. Ich meine, 5 Farben und Seltenheiten sind zwar ganz cool, aber da geht jedenfalls noch mehr. Ich bin auf jeden Fall schon sehr gespannt, wie es weitergeht und freue mich darauf, die Cryptostamp 2 dann endlich in den Händen zu halten, wie auch immer sie dann aussieht.
So, wir haben jetzt einiges über die erste Ausgabe der Cryptostamp gehört. Welche Neuerungen erwarten uns denn bei der zweiten Ausgabe?
Also bevor ich es vorwegnehme, würde ich gern vielleicht noch ein bisschen auf das Thema eingehen, wieso eigentlich das Einhorn? Das Einhorn steht für die Startups, die einen Marktwert erreicht haben und kurz vor dem Börsengang stehen. Und das war so unser Symbolträger auch im ersten Projekt. Und darüber hinaus ist es ja auch so, dass wir im Hintergrund, also in der Blockchain-Technologie, die Ethereum-Währung uns zunutze gemacht haben, was ebenfalls das Einhorn als Symbolträger hat. Was bedeutet das jetzt also für die Cryptostamp 2? Wird es in dieselbe Richtung gehen? Werden wir wieder aufs Einhorn aufspringen? Sind es vielleicht andere Motive? Ein bisschen was kann ich vorwegnehmen. Es werden nicht nur eine sein, es werden diesmal sogar 4 sein, die wir gleichzeitig auf den Markt bringen werden. Es werden 4 geheimnisvolle neue Tiere sein, die wir im Zuge dessen bewerben möchten und beziehungsweise bekannt machen möchten. Und wir haben uns ein bisschen auch mit der Materialität beschäftigt. Das bedeutet, wir alle sind ja auch ein bisschen von dem Thema Umweltgedanken getragen und dem wollten wir natürlich auch nachgehen und haben viel geforscht, viel experimentiert, viel ausprobiert und sind jetzt wieder zurück aufs Briefmarkenpapier gekommen. Das heißt, so viel vorweg darf ich nehmen, wir werden die nächste Briefmarke tatsächlich auf Papier machen und es wird auch eine philatelistische Besonderheit geben, sie wird nämlich nassklebend sein.
Das klingt wirklich überaus spannend. Die Firma Capacity begleitet das Projekt bereits seit der ersten Ausgabe, somit seit dem Vorjahr. Aus welchem Grund wurde denn genau dieses Unternehmen als Partner ausgewählt?
Ja, also als wir die Cryptostamp begonnen haben, haben wir das Projekt mit der Patent and Foundry Company, mit dem Johannes Höfler, gestartet. In weiterer Folge kam es dann zur Umsetzung und in der Umsetzung wurde uns die Firma Capacity mit dem Andreas Pettersen empfohlen, wo von Anfang an die Chemie einfach sehr gut gestimmt hat und funktioniert hat. Des Weiteren hat Andreas Pettersen mit seinem gesamten Team wirklich sehr kreative und innovative Ideen. Das heißt, er ist nicht nur Umsetzer, sondern er ist auch eine kreative Person, die hier viele Funktionalitäten der Cryptostamp 1, aber auch der Cryptostamp 2 mit in der Creation entwickelt hat. Und das ist der Grund, warum wir hier eine sehr gute, vertrauensvolle Zusammenarbeit haben, die wir auch hier bei der Cryptostamp 2 jetzt umsetzen. Und das ist der Grund, warum wir mit Capacity zusammenarbeiten.
Von der Blockchain-Technologie geht es jetzt direkt weiter zur Produktion. Dazu haben wir Ihnen ein paar Bilder zusammengestellt und ein Interview mit dem Experten Michael Dorner. Herr Dorner ist CEO der Firma Various Card und hat die Produktion der Cryptostamp von Anfang an begleitet.
Der erste Schritt ist die Vorstufe. Dort werden die Daten geprüft und gleichzeitig auch die Platten für den Offset und der Film für den Siebdruck erstellt. Der nächste Schritt ist der Offset-Druck. Dort kommt dann der Farbdruck oder das Layout, so wie wir das kennen, auf den Karton drauf. Danach geht es auch schon gleich weiter in den Siebdruck, wo der Lack aufgebracht wird. Danach kommt es auch schon zum ersten Mal stanzen. Dort wird dieses kleine Fenster gestanzt, die Marke wird angestanzt. Danach kommt es zum Kleben. Und dann kommt der zweite Stanzschritt, dort werden die Karten als solches gestanzt, das heißt die Kontur der Karte wird dann gestanzt. Dann fehlt nur noch die Folienprägung. Die Folienprägung, die Veredelung, die passiert dann eben bereits in den Einzelkarten. Dann kommt das Ganze in den Sicherheitsbereich, wo die Personalisierung stattfindet. Zu guter Letzt wird die Karte natürlich noch verpackt in wunderschönen Verpackungen, die ebenfalls eine Folienprägung haben. Es kommt noch einmal ein Sicherheitsetikett drauf und dann kommt das Ganze zum Kunden und zu Ihnen. Das Herausfordernde an der Cryptostamp 1 war, dass es dieses Produkt einfach in dieser Form noch nie gegeben hat. Das war eine komplette Neuentwicklung, eine gleichermaßen herausfordernde wie auch spannende Entwicklung, die auch sehr viel Spaß gemacht hat. Und die Cryptostamp 2, für die gilt eigentlich genau dasselbe, wobei diese noch um einiges aufwendiger ist. Dort gibt es über 10 Arbeitsschritte, die zu der fertigen Marke führen. Ich denke, dass das wirklich kann man sagen, weltweites Novum ist, ein komplett neues Produkt, sowohl in der Kartenwelt als auch in der Briefmarkenwelt. Und es war sehr, sehr spannend, daran zu arbeiten. Es fließen sehr, sehr viele Technologien hinein, Drucktechnologien, Verarbeitungstechnologien. Und es hat uns sehr, sehr gefreut, hier dieses Produkt neu zu entwickeln.
Frau Liebermann, zum Schluss kommt die wohl wichtigste Frage. Wird es denn eine dritte Ausgabe der Cryptostamp geben?
Bevor ich das verrate, muss ich noch mal ganz kurz auf die Cryptostamp 2.0 eingehen. Und zwar ist es so, bleiben Sie gespannt. Wir verraten ja bald die 4 Tiere. Halten Sie sich Informationen bereit. Auf unserer Homepage können Sie alles entdecken, erfahren, sich aktuell halten, zum Newsletter anmelden. Und darüber hinaus werden wir eben mit dem Pre-Sale starten. Die echte Briefmarke kommt ja dann am 25.06. auf all unseren Vertriebskanälen zum Vorschein. Also bleiben Sie gespannt. Und um Ihre Frage abschließend zu beantworten, wie sieht es denn aus mit einer CS3? Tja, es bleibt kryptisch.
Sehr fein. Ich darf sagen, vielen lieben Dank. Wir starten jetzt gleich den Presale der Cryptostamp 2.0. Und zwar sehen Sie gleich 2 Links eingeblendet. Diese führen direkt in den Online-Shop der österreichischen Post sowie in den On-Chain-Store. Auf diesen beiden Plattformen können Sie sich die Cryptostamp bis zum 10. Juni vorreservieren, aber natürlich nur solange der Vorrat reicht. Denn, wie Sie wissen, war die Cryptostamp im letzten Jahr innerhalb kürzester Zeit vergriffen. Also sichern Sie sich jetzt gleich Ihre Exemplare. Wir wünschen viel Freude damit.
Die Cryptostamp der Post, die erste Blockchain-Briefmarke der Welt.
Well, thank you very much, Austrian Prost, for this. This has been a great start to the second day of ANON Summit 2020. We are about to go on a break for about 2 hours, and although there might not be any live programs on our stage, make sure that you check out our expo area. That's where you will get some more insight into some of the things that you've already heard today. Also, don't forget, you can use the sessions area to hear from the experts on various topics, so I'm sure there is something for everyone. And finally, our networking area is there for you to use as a platform to connect with like-minded people. We are going to be back in about 2 hours. Make sure that you grab a bite, and we will see you a few minutes before 3 Vienna time. That's when we will start with our new track, and actually the last track of the day, blockchain and crypto. See you soon.